Hey guys. This is part 6 of What If Naruto was one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 26, The Dark Prince. Tobirama found himself camouflaged inside a thick forest of trees that surrounded the pirate base. From his current position, he and the Kiri ninja around him could easily see the entire base, recording every movement of the enemy. Their platoon leader, Haku, stood still as a rock, but the young girl's unflinching gaze showed a resolve to see her mission through. When both of them spotted faint silhouettes of Naruto's scout team flying towards the center of the base under the cover of the night, they knew it was time. Get ready. Those that were here along with the other members of their platoon spread across the entire island formed a secured perimeter quickly by slapping silencing seals on the designated checkpoints. Tobirama watched Haku perform her own set of hand seals before slamming it against the seal she had placed on her own tree. It glowed brightly for 1 millisecond, followed by similar fading sparks occurring across the entire island in a circular perimeter that was set up. That was when the first of the bombs were dropped. Tobirama could only watch in silent admiration and slight fear as the scout team dropped their poison bombs one after another across the barracks and the docks, unleashing a wave of terror and chaos across the entire enemy camp. The Hokage watched dozens upon dozens of men melting before his eyes at the docks as the poison seared through their skin and blood. The barracks were much less of a cruel scene, as most of its occupants were asleep at this late hour and were dead before they even realized what had happened. A handful stronger ones, or those that were not asleep yet, managed to storm outside in a hurry, only to be pinned against the walls of their barracks with a kunai lodged in their head courtesy of the scout team that was ready to mop up any such lucky survivors from the sky. While he could not see what was happening in the harbor, Tobirama could feel several chakra signatures active in that zone, indicating the 3 Kiri platoons had also launched their attack from that direction, led by their respective swordsmen. Just when the enemy thought they had grasped the worst of their situation, the eastern and western gates were breached. Masked commandos led by Mangetsu and Kisame stormed in from each respective direction, putting down every standing body in their path. It didn't matter whether the person was a man or woman, old or young, heavily or lightly armed. Almost every one of them received 2 deadly kunai shots in the chest, followed by 1 in the head within seconds. Naturally, quite a few of the pirates realized the futility of resistance, watching as every second more and more of their comrades were dropping dead. A few had tried charging at the enemy only to be riddled with kunai by the commandos without even getting close. The handful that could use chakra were more successful in getting closer to the enemies, but only met a gruesome end at the hands of Mangetsu and Kisame, who shred those brave fools in half or worse. With the enemy in the open nearly wiped out, the commandos started for their next target. Swiftly they stacked up against the tavern where quite a few of the pirates had taken shelter and were preparing to mount a counteroffensive. The 501st Commandos threw several smoke bombs through the window before breaking through the door. High right, neutralized. Behind the bar, 1 in the head, clear left, clear right. Tobirama could only listen to the swift communication between the commandos that were carrying out their mission quite impressively. Granted, they were not fighting against ninjas, but their efficiency and style of execution was near flawless. Then the northern gate was reduced to shreds courtesy of a powerful force of wind which sent dozens of its defenders sailing away in various directions. Tobirama could only gawk at the dramatic entrance of his son. He was definitely going in for the terror, as nobody walked into an enemy camp by exploding the front door and strolling in with dark wings on their back. To the terrified defenders, he must have looked like a demon from hell with his red eyes and dark wings, along with that haunting killing intent. The entire camp was collapsing from every direction, with the survivors having no choice but to run for their lives. One such group found itself running exactly towards Tobirama's direction. He raised his kunai but was beaten to the punch when a volley of kunai and senbon were fired by Haku and her platoon, which instantly decimated the enemy deserters. Even when their bodies hit the ground, a second volley was fired over them, putting down the chance of any miraculous survivors. Textbook kills praised Haku coldly, earning respectful nods from her commandos at the praise. Similar scenes were taking place all over the island as the rest of her platoon prevented any such deserters from escaping the kill zone, ensuring the objective of not leaving behind any enemy combatants alive was met. Everything was going just as planned, yet Tobirama's sensory powers tickled for a moment, which made him frown, something that didn't go unnoticed by the beautiful but deadly swordsman beside him. "What is it?" asked Haku. "We may have a perimeter breach from the outside," said Tobirama hesitantly, as he was still not sure of what he had felt just a moment ago. "Impossible. We secured the entire island before moving in. Don't you think any of our sentries would have updated us by now? Still, where did you feel this breach happening?" asked Haku cautiously, unwilling to brush aside the concerns of a formidable warrior like the Hokage. She was a censor herself and had not felt what Tobirama had experienced, yet Tobirama's narrowed gaze made her nervous and more on edge. The sea. Haku swiftly turned towards the unending ocean that lay beyond the harbor. 3 of her men had been stationed there to prevent anyone from escaping via the ocean in case Zabuza and the others missed any such enemies. Bird, falcon, turtle, status report, commanded Haku, using the codenames assigned to each operative. Tobirama was further alarmed when they received no response on the communication channel from either of those 3 commandos. Haku tried a few more times, but only met with dead silence. The Hokage swiftly expanded his sensory powers to its full extent and felt Haku doing the same along with the other commandos in their unit holding similar skill. Asked the nearest team to investigate that sector, advised Tobirama. Crow and Beast, go check on Bird and his group. Be careful and expect hostile contact, ordered Haku. Acknowledged. From the other side of the island, Tobirama felt the chakra signatures of the 2 respective commandos moving in the ordered direction to investigate until they suddenly vanished from his senses completely. Haku must have felt the same as her face lost all color. But before she could react any further, the girl found herself tackled swiftly towards the ground courtesy of Tobirama. As they fell, she witnessed 7 of her own men falling alongside them, each with a kunai lodged in his head. She and the Hokage barely had time to take up defensive positions on the ground when more of her men fell to the ground, with every one of them having a kunai lodged in the head or neck. Tobirama didn't wait for his protectors and instead threw his special kunai in the direction where the attack was coming from. Before Haku could even utter a word of protest, the Hokage vanished. Naruto snapped the neck of the fool that thought charging at him head-on was a good idea. To be honest, these pirates were not even worthy fighters, or maybe he was being unjust towards them considering most of them couldn't even use chakra, had no formal military training, were taken completely by surprise in the middle of the night, and were simply no match for the 501st Commandos that were better trained personally by the blonde. He was pleased when he watched the efficiency and coordination with which his men moved. Granted, this mission was not even a proper test of their abilities, but it gave them actual battlefield experience where they worked together as a unit. It was an essential learning lesson before they faced rival special ops from other villages like the Kinkaku from Kumo, Demolitions Unit from IWA, or the upcoming Ambu factions from Suna, Konoha, or Yuzu in the future if the latest intel reports were correct. Even if this war led to a lasting peace, he doubted the war in the shadows would ever be over. It had existed long before he was born and would probably continue long after he was gone. Still, it was a long way to go before they were fully capable of facing any threat under any circumstances. The honor of being truly worthy of facing any enemy under the most difficult circumstances could only be attributed to those men that perished nearly a decade ago under his command. He could only imagine how strong they would have become today had they survived. They already were one of the most dangerous unit all those years ago. We're under attack. He raised a surprised eyebrow on hearing Haku's alarmed voice over his channel, making him activate his own line towards the young girl. How many? He asked calmly, curious as to why a bunch of pirates were actually giving her any trouble. Unknown. I've lost 10 men already. Watch out! Cried Haku fiercely. Naruto heard the explosions over the channel along with a small plume of smoke rising in the sky from the forest where Haku was protecting Tobirama. It was supposed to be the most safest position. Commander, we're pinned inside the harbor. Heavy suppressive fire. Reported Zabuza bitterly over a new channel. Suppressive fire? Elaborate. Ordered Naruto swiftly, a bad feeling now forming in the pit of his stomach. Seems the enemy may have managed to acquire some of our weapons and flanked us. Answered Zabuza furiously. Winter, what the hell happened to your men tasked with defending our perimeter and protecting the backs of our CQC teams? Demanded Naruto furiously, and heard Haku suck in a terrified breath, knowing heads were going to roll if this was a mistake made by anyone in any manner, especially under her command. They're dead. Naruto felt his heart skip several beats as he contemplated the possibility of an ambush being sprung on his forces. No pirates were strong enough for such a bold move. Was it Madara and his forces? If so, then how the hell did they came to know about this mission despite all the precaution and diversions they had undertaken to keep it a secret? Was there a traitor in his own ranks? So many questions and possibilities, but there was only one course of action that he could take right now. Counterattack. The order resonated across each and every commando from the 501st and their respective leaders. The sheer ferocity in the commander's voice instilled some much-needed boost in the shaken morale of the troops. Platoon 5, reinforce platoons 2, 3, and 4 pinned in the harbor and take the fight back to the enemy. Ordered Naruto. Right away, Commander, replied Mangetsu confidently. Platoon 6, Have your men secure the base and prevent any new fronts from opening up. Take care of the wounded and any possible innocents inside this base. I can sense 2 fronts, one in Platoon 1's direction and the other towards the harbor. Once the base is secure, I want half of your men to begin flanking maneuver in both directions while the rest hold this position. Understood? Explained Naruto seriously. Very well, said Kisame calmly. With that taken care of, Naruto looked at the sky and was proud to see his scout team of 10 commandos was waiting for him. His dark wings opened fully across his back as he took to the skies, making them follow after him. Commander, we lost sight of the VIP. The man charged in the direction the attack is coming from, reported Haku hesitantly, knowing it was her main responsibility to keep the Hokage safe. She expected a severe rebuke for such a dangerous mistake, and was left surprised on hearing something entirely different. I'll take care of him. Focus on the enemy now and minimize your casualties. Countercharge their position in Delta formation, ordered Naruto calmly, knowing there was no stopping a man like Tobirama if he was determined to do something, considering he knew the Hirishin had made him a huge liability and an asset at the same time. They couldn't honestly control his movements if he decided to be difficult since he could teleport, but an experienced shinobi like him should know how idiotic his actions were looking right now. Or was there a more grave reason which forced the former Hokage to take such a risky move? It was not the place or time to ponder any further on these questions, which only made him speed up his approach towards the direction where he felt the Hokage's chakra appear. Catching his kunai, the Senju clan head appeared over a small ridge overlooking the forest through a slope. The elevated angle gave a perfect line of sight on his and Haku's last position. The sight of 2 501st Commandos pinned against a rock with their bodies shredded with kunai made him understand why no warning ever came from the men posted to guard their rear and flanks across the island. It was also the moment when Tobirama caught sight of their enemy for the first time. It couldn't be. A trio of explosive kunai were instantly released from his hands in a swift manner which headed straight towards the large group of ninjas currently laying heavy fire over Haku's position. 2 of them sensed the incoming danger and turned upward, spotting the Hokage, or more accurately his attack, and quickly fired a hail of kunai from their own kunai launchers, destroying the incoming projectiles in mid-air. Smoke and dust spread in the air from the resulting explosions, and from the ashes emerged a furious Tobirama that descended upon the enemy forces only to watch them calmly scatter in various directions, thereby avoiding him completely. As soon as his feet touched the ground, 4 pillars of dark chakra emerged from each direction across the slope, which soon turned into a raging inferno that was rapidly closing towards the now trapped former Hokage. Tobirama tried to teleport to the nearest marking he had left while on his approach towards this position. To his shock and disbelief, he found himself unable to teleport. His sensory powers quickly focused him in the direction of the 4 flaming pillars currently closing in on him. Within 15 seconds he would be fried to a crisp. Anti-teleportation seals were supposed to be a concept still existing in theory only. Even Tobirama himself was yet to crack the secrets behind that jutsu even after so many years. Yet he couldn't see any seals planted nearby, nor could he even feel their presence. It was then he looked at the approaching wall of flames from all directions and realized the truth. It's this chakra that is preventing me from making contact with my other teleportation seals. There are no seals acting as the barrier, instead this foul chakra itself is one. His worried gaze tried to think of a way out, and was quite relieved when he felt another set of presence enter the area. Water style, water wall. A tidal wave washed over Tobirama's position, drenching the Hokage along with the pillars of flames threatening to burn him alive. However, it also created a thick wall of steam resulting from the heat. Naruto and his scout team appeared beside the Hokage and adopted a defensive formation around him. The blonde commander considered himself lucky to be able to execute such a powerful attack from nearly a kilometer away. It was only thanks to his men joining their power against his own which made the wave strong enough to reach its target and required time, and thereby saving his life. What only made his worries even worse was the alarmed look on his father's face. It was as if the man had seen a ghost. He had not been able to get a clear glimpse of the enemy, unlike the Senju leader beside him, but fortunately he saw movement in the mist ahead of them, followed by faint shadows appearing on the horizon. The 501st Commandos were quite shocked when their commander took an uncertain step back. The look on his face consisted of nothing but disbelief and fear, which only served to alarm them further. They looked ahead and saw a large number of enemies appearing on the other side of the mist slowly. They were wearing dark black full-sleeved t-shirts and similar colored pants, and complemented by matching colored combat boots. Their chests were covered in dark-colored armor with faint blue lines, their faces covered by a gas mask with 2 breathing holes extended down the chin. Each of them had twin swords on their backs and their body covered in pouches holding shuriken, smoke bombs, medkits, and entire magazines of kunai for the launcher weapon in their hands, the same that the Kiri Commandos were also sporting at present. Their bone-chilling killing intent and steady combat positions only served to unnerve the Kiri forces further. "You're supposed to be dead," whispered Naruto in disbelief. Tobirama watched in stunned silence as the long-deceased Spartan Black Ops Commandos remained unmoved despite their former commander's words. It wasn't just a setup or an illusion, as they had the same chakra signatures that Tobirama remembered from their fading corpses on that battlefield all those years ago. The power he felt from them was nothing to underestimate. He could take them on individually with ease, but against a group as large as this, he needed backup. It had taken 20 Kinkaku ninjas to capture him just a few months ago. Spartans, barely 120 of them, had done the impossible in their final mission. They went behind enemy lines on a suicidal mission to rescue Hashirama without any backup from their nation or its allies, managed to free him from the custody of the Kinkaku, escaped from the prison back towards friendly lines only to be surrounded by thousands of Kumo shinobi alongside the Kinkaku and the two-tailed beast. Denied any rescue aid or support, they were left to die behind enemy lines. Even after being betrayed by their motherland, they stuck to their mission. They chose to make a last stand while allowing Naruto to escape with Hashirama to safety. Each and every one of those 120 souls had perished that night except for their broken commander, but their valiant final stand led to the deaths of hundreds of Kumo shinobi, half the Kinkaku force, and the brutal murder of their tailed beast. It effectively crushed any further involvement from Kumogakure in the ongoing war in a few short weeks. Even after such a sacrifice, their deeds were lost in history courtesy of their respective nations unwilling to admit to the guilt of sending these shinobi to their deaths and not helping them in their final hour. Now, even after death, their souls were not allowed peace and were now being defiled in the vilest form. Tobirama was now able to discern the technique at play here. It was one he had created himself as a last resort in order to turn the tide in a losing war in order to avoid what had happened to the Spartans. Instead of risking young shinobi like that, he would be sending undead warriors to do the same job. Killing machines that were unstoppable, uncontrollable except by their master, had no hesitation and an unlimited power to fight for eternity. Edo Tensei. He may have developed this dark kenjutsu but was yet to implement the same in practice himself. The fact that it was being used by someone else was proof that the enemy had managed to infiltrate his clan's personal library inside Konoha and steal the scroll holding the information about the jutsu, or at the very least make a copy. The fact that they were actually able to perform it at such a magnitude spoke volumes about their skill. There could only be one man behind this ambush, and Tobirama dreaded the possibility of facing him in battle if he emerged from the shadows from where he must be controlling these reanimated former Yuzu shinobi. He hesitantly glanced at his son, and was pained to see the heartbroken look on his face. One look in his eye was enough to prove he still felt responsible for the deaths of each and every Spartan standing before him. He may have forgiven himself, but he could never forget. Yet that same shinobi surprised the Hokage again when he closed his eyes and heaved a resigned sigh. "This is real, isn't it?" asked the boy. "This is a jutsu I developed that summons the dead back to life through the sacrifice of a living soul. Edo Tensei is what I call it. They cannot be killed since they are already dead. Physical or mental pain means nothing to those bodies. Any damage can be healed. Their chakra is near infinite. The only way to stop them is to either force the caster to do it, as killing him won't stop this dark jutsu either. Or we can seal them," advised Tobirama seriously. "Can they see me?" Naruto's whisper barely reached Tobirama's ears, but the longing wish in the boy's eyes said it all. "They are being completely controlled by the looks of it. They don't even remember they are being controlled, so don't hesitate to defend yourself as they will go for the kill," warned the Hokage. Tobirama's eyes widened when he felt the monstrous killing intent being unleashed by his son that brought many 501st Commandos to their knees. The Spartan force remained unmoved against their former commander's power spike. "Naruto, stay back, Hokage. This isn't your fight." The Senju clan head narrowed his gaze and frowned heavily at that cold warning. As if understanding his will, the 501st Commandos appeared beside the Hokage and adopted a defensive formation around him. Before he could object, another stark presence entered the area that made him take a step back in alarm. He wasn't the only one that felt the shift as the commandos near him shook nervously as a feeling of absolute despair and suffering fell upon them. Unlike Naruto's power that was burning like an inferno of primal rage, this one radiated an aura of a cold wind that threatened to seep into each shinobi's soul and suck the life out of them all. To their continued horror, many of the trees around them started to wither before their eyes, and they all felt that suffocating power descending upon them. Naruto's counter-flare of dark energy destroyed that threatening presence, much to the relief of his commandos. Except Tobirama's sensory reflexes were screaming at him in alarm. He had clearly felt the power behind Naruto's energy. It was enough to block the incoming offensive energy but not strong enough to deflect it, which only meant its caster had pulled back himself. Out of caution or amusement was something the Hokage couldn't figure out. As the dying trees were fully reduced to dust, Tobirama gulped as he realized the same would have been their fate had Naruto not stopped that energy he had felt from descending upon them. "What was that?" he whispered, instantly hating how unnerved his own voice appeared. "It's him," answered Naruto bitterly, as he clenched his fists, drawing blood. The blonde bit his own lip before glancing back the veteran Kage beside him reluctantly. "I'm afraid I'll need your help after all, although I never expected this day to come," said Naruto, his request being directed solely on Tobirama's own communication channel alone. "Is that got something to do with this presence I am feeling?" whispered Tobirama, drawing curious glances from the commandos around him who wanted to know what the two were discussing but were torn between paying attention to that chatter or the dangerous threat right in front of them ready to pounce at any time. "Yes, keep the rest of the Spartans busy with the 501st's help. I'll take care of him." "You still haven't answered my question?" "Is it?" His question was cut off as thunder rumbled across the sky monstrously, and shards of lightning strikes rained down upon the island mercilessly. In that flash of light, Tobirama found himself glancing at a stationary figure floating in the sky. "The strongest Spartan," whispered Naruto sadly, anger and pride both mixed in his fleeting confession. "I thought you were," whispered the Hokage over their private channel, only for the Namikaze to shake his head. "I was the fastest." One of the commandos glanced at the sky and was alarmed when he saw the once dark sky erupt into flames instantly. The explosion rendered each and every shinobi blind, and the following shockwaves sent all the commandos sailing away like flies. Tobirama was forced to his knees and he watched Naruto gaze at that burning sky as his dark wings prevented him from flying away like the others by the shockwave. The Hokage's senses were further alarmed when he saw the Spartans take up aggressive stances. The sky was still on fire, and from amidst the flames came a figure that descended towards them at a relaxed pace. Unlike the other Spartans, he was not wearing a mask but only the uniform. He was pale-skinned and had dark red hair with one long banging blocking one of his eyes. Uzumaki. On closer observation, Tobirama was quite surprised to find the young boy having his own pair of dark wings across his back, courtesy of the dark chakra floating all around him. The same one that was also flowing within Naruto's own body. The redhead landed in front of them gracefully, making Naruto avert his gaze. Elder brother. Chapter 27, Lost Boy Chronicles, Part 4. A decade earlier, Yukina Uzumaki flinched and cowered behind her position as thunderous explosions rained all around her, marred with the screams of her comrades that were ripped to shreds at the base of the mountain. She sneaked a peek and was heartbroken on seeing the enemy fleet had been successful. The southern borders leading towards Yuzu were defended by the Fujima Mountains and the wide sea that was full of whirlpools and dangerous storms. It was considered extremely difficult to invade with high casualty rates for any enemy force, hence the village elders had only deployed a small company of their ninjas to defend this route, leaving the majority of their forces to defend the other more vulnerable directions. Yukina had remembered how horrified her captain had been on learning of how undermanned his entire sector was going to be and had protested fiercely to the leadership, arguing about the grave risk it would be to the village's safety. Ultimately, Captain Daisuke had only been assured of timely and sufficient reinforcements in the event he came under heavy attack from the enemy forces. The 15-year-old Uzumaki Chunin could only curse that decision and her own misfortune when Kumogakure sent 2 entire battalions to invade. For days, their naval ships had bombarded the beach, thereby inflicting casualties, reducing morale and weakening the barrier seals that Captain Daisuke had erected across the coast. Captain Daisuke had called for reinforcements immediately after seeing the gravity of the situation. That had been 10 days ago. Now their beach was overrun, courtesy of the enemy successfully turning off the whirlpool storms that had defended the coast as a natural barrier. Yuzu's leadership had put a lot of unnecessary faith in the natural forces protecting their nation, and the screams of her comrades were a proof of that mistake as the overrun defenders retreated hastily towards the Fujima Mountains, which would serve as their second line of defense now that the beach was overrun. Even now, the enemy ships were bombarding their retreat, and the explosions had now reached the slope of the mountain where Yukina's bunker was situated. She dared not venture out into the open, and only watched sadly as a jounin was blown in half when one of the bombs launched by the enemy fleet landed a few feet away from him. He was not the only one, as nearly half of the retreating Uzumaki force was knocked off its feet by the following shockwave, much to the delight of the Kumogakure battalion right on their heels. Captain Daisuke saw the horror and turned back towards the direction of the approaching enemy forces along with few of the other surviving jounin. "Go! Save yourselves!" yelled Daisuke fiercely. Many of the younger and injured Uzumaki were jolted out of their shocked daze on hearing their leader's fierce command. They watched him and 7 other jounin form a defensive line between them and the approaching enemy troops. That sight was enough to instill enough courage into Yukina that she jumped out of her bunker and looked at her comrades of the rear guard currently hiding inside similar bunkers nearby. Save the wounded! She was surprised on hearing the strength and resolve in her own war cry. But it was enough as 7 of her comrades joined her as together they descended down the slope rapidly towards the limping forms of their retreating comrades. Captain Daesuk and his jounins had formed a barrier that had blocked the enemy's charge, but judging from its rapidly crumbling state, it wouldn't hold for long. Quick! Water clones! She commanded. Roger! Chorused her fellow Chunin beside her, as they all formed nearly 24 water clones that now ran alongside them. Within a few seconds they reached their wounded comrades. As the water clones started carrying the wounded back up the mountain, Yukina saw the first major crack in the barrier erected by her captain. She looked at her captain and saw he looked prepared to die in order to protect the retreat of his shattered force. Where the hell are the reinforcements? Yelled one of her Chunin comrades angrily. There were none, whispered Yukina sadly, realizing the lie they had all been led to believe by the village elders. A resounding explosion jolted the young Uzumaki out of her despair. As she and her fellow Chunin glanced forward once more, they were shocked to see one ship of the enemy fleet explode into thousands of pieces courtesy of a devastating blast that tore it apart. Before even a single gasp could escape from her lips, Yukina saw more and more of the enemy's ships being blown to shreds without any mercy. There was a strange buzzing sound in the air, and looking up, her eyes widened even further when she saw nearly a dozen humanoid figures falling towards them from the skies. In the blink of an eye, the new arrivals zoomed towards the enemy forces on the ground and unleashed a rain of paper bombs strapped across sharp and nimble kunai being launched at a frightening speed from the weapons in the hands of these airborne troops. The front line of the enemy force was torn to shreds, while sending most of their remaining troops sailing backwards. Many didn't get back up. Yukina and the remaining Uzumaki felt a flicker of hope being reborn in their hearts, and could only watch in stunned silence as the new arrivals did a low flyby several feet above the ground, where they again launched a salvo of kunai at the few jounin that were attempting to rally the disarrayed enemy forces. They avoided the incoming barrage with ease, only to catch sight of a blonde flash that disappeared before they could even blink. Yukina flinched when the same warrior appeared in front of the Uzumaki forces in a defensive position. To her horror, the targeted enemy officers' heads rolled down to the ground, instantly crushing the morale of the remaining troops under their command. The masked blonde warrior raised his hand, making his comrades land around him as the wings across their backs shrunk into an extremely comfortable small size. First platoon with me. Formation 5. He commanded in a fierce voice that expected nothing but obedience. He glanced back at Yukina's group, making her flinch when she saw how red his eyes were. Most of all, the coldness and hatred in them unnerved her. Second platoon, tend to our wounded and keep the rest safe, ordered the blonde. The troops in black-colored uniforms moved in unison on those orders, with half of them separating into respective groups in one swift motion. The ones that surrounded the dangerous blonde reloaded the weapons in their hands as he unleashed his sword. Yukina felt courage flow through her, and stepped forward to help her comrades, only to be stopped by Captain Daisuke and the jounins that had now retreated towards their position. Let the Spartans handle this, child, advised the old Uzumaki in a compassionate voice. Daisuke, I never imagined the higher-ups would deploy Spartans as our reinforcements. It seems the gods have not abandoned us yet, praised another veteran jounin in relief. Yukina could not fault the man when she saw the swift and effective way in which the Spartans were tending to their wounded while few others formed a defensive perimeter. The group at the front with the blonde was ready and unleashed their first volley of kunai at the enemy instantly. The blonde vanished before her eyes, only to appear amidst the dodging enemy troops that were trying to avoid the storm of sharp kunais sailing all around them. Many fell silent moments later when the blonde's sword severed their heads or slashed their necks. CQC, the Spartans from the blonde's group placed their kunai launchers on their backs on hearing the command from one of their own. They equipped themselves with the twin swords on their backs and quickly channeled their chakra through the blades, giving them a glowing aura. Unlike the blonde, who was using teleportation technique of some hidden nature, his men charged forward into the ongoing melee battle in the traditional manner with their speed, leaving almost everyone scrambling to get away from their path. Those that dared to oppose were skewed in half when the Spartan force tore clean through them. Yukina had never seen a gruesome battle as this in her short life, as heads, limbs, weapons and screams started flying across the entire battlefield. It was clear even for her that the Spartans were much faster, more deadlier, and determined to win at any cost. A resolve that the enemy troops, now devoid of their officers, severely lacked. It was no surprise when many broke ranks and started to flee, earning a wave of approving roars and cheers from the Uzumaki forces in the area. Kill them all. Yukina grimaced when the Spartans brought forth their kunai launchers once more and aimed in the direction of the broken enemy force currently fleeing for their lives. Fire! A volley of kunai put an end to that struggle forever. The battlefield fell silent save for the moans of the handful enemy wounded mixed with the Uzumaki, only for the blonde to walk towards each of the enemy wounded and put a kunai right between their eyes. The gruesome execution was not something she could accept just yet, but Yukina saw none of the Spartans looked away, nor did many of her fellow comrades who had nothing but hate in their hearts for the people that wanted to take their freedom away. She instead turned to look at the skies in order to not look at what the blonde was doing. It was necessary but too brutal. She saw another dozen Spartan warriors flying towards them with the help of their winged devices, this group being led by a masked redhead. Both groups decided to meet up near the foot of the Fujima Mountains, and Yukino was quite surprised when the cold-hearted blonde Spartan ran forward and hugged the redhead, much to the younger boy's embarrassment. However, that affectionate gesture put many of the other Uzumaki at ease, including Yukina, who couldn't help but see the contrast before their eyes. Mere moments ago, this boy was nothing more than a brutal killing machine, and now he was just someone worried about a fellow comrade. It put a human face behind those scary gas masks. Even now, the villagers and the shinobi forces still didn't know much about the Spartans. They were fellow patriots who were exceptionally talented and powerful beyond imagination, yet nobody knew the people behind those masks. It was to maintain the secret of their identities, and there were some rumors flowing around that the higher-ups had carried out brutal experiments on many children who had volunteered for a special program few years back, and the result was now looking at them in the form of Spartan warriors. If her guess was correct, these warriors should be in their early teens, and yet they looked to be in their late teens with their enhanced body frames and muscle tissue. "You do know I killed more than you today?" teased the redhead playfully, earning a scoff from the blonde Spartan. "You just like to blow shit up," muttered the blonde in a sulky tone. Yukina's doubts became reality when she heard their young voices which didn't fit with their older bodies. The blonde had the tone of someone her age, or close to it at least. She had a feeling they could pretend to change their voices if required, but it was still astonishing to witness nonetheless. "A bet is a bet. I blew up the enemy fleet there by killing an entire battalion waiting in reserve along with their sailors. That makes my kill count higher than yours on this battlefield. Time to pay up on our bet," said the redhead with a jovial laugh. "You do know how expensive that manga is to buy?" asked the blonde with playful tears running down his cheeks, as he grabbed the redhead's shoulders pleadingly. "Yep. That's why you're the one paying for it from your own pocket," retorted the redhead victoriously, making the blonde slump in defeat with a dark cloud hovering above him. Yukina and the others could only watch in amusement as the two Spartans, whose auras dwarfed the others significantly, continued to argue back and forth about shounen manga, a unique way of storytelling prevalent among their village since its inception. Many renowned stories and writers had been born through this art form, and a large portion of their fellow citizens actively subscribed to it. It was a booming business, with many of the friendly nations also sometimes requesting these services to be extended to their people. Another female redhead appeared beside the sulking blonde Spartan, bopping him on the head, albeit playfully. "Come on, you know you want to read more about Owen again, don't you?" she teased playfully. "I still don't understand why you are such a fangirl of him." "Levi is more cooler," scolded the redhead boy, and smiled on seeing the fire that lit in the blonde's eyes. "Shut your whore mouth. There is nobody better than Owen fucking Smith," defended the blonde fiercely, with righteous fury burning in his eyes. Captain Daisuke's light cough interrupted the fierce debate, making the Spartans look at the older man, who gave them an amused smile and a grateful bow, which was soon replicated by his surviving fighters. The Spartans were surprised but thumped their fists against their hearts, which was what people had now came to recognize as their official salute. "You totally stole this from the manga," elder brother whispered the redhead mischievously. "Shut it. No harm in it if our people are not objecting to it," retorted the blonde with a blush. "Duh. You think they have a choice?" teased the female redhead, much to the blonde's added embarrassment when he saw their fellow countrymen trying to hide their smirks and smiles. "You guys are terrible." 2 days later, Nagato Uzumaki stepped across the beach near the village alongside Kushina and other fellow Spartans now that they were officially given some shore leave from the constant missions they had been engaged in. There was an excited smile on his face as he held in his hands the latest manga volume of his favorite series that his brother had subscribed and paid for courtesy of their bet. Speaking of him, Nagato found his elder sibling standing at the shore and just peacefully staring at the morning sunrise that was about to happen any time now. A holler of cheers erupted from their comrades as they rushed towards the water happily. Kushina pleaded with him to join them, but he waved her off and instead walked towards his brother. When he stepped beside his half-brother, he saw a peaceful yet melancholic look on his face. Together they watched their comrades go wild in the sea water, their shrieks of joy and laughter a much more welcoming sound to the screams of dying people that they heard almost every day, mostly due to their own hands. "It's beautiful," elder brother said Nagato with a happy smile, as he saw the first rays of the sun pierce through the dark clouds. "Yeah, it is," agreed Minato in a whisper. "What's on your mind?" asked Nagato with a knowing look on his face as he sensed something troubling his sibling. "I have been named as the leader of the Spartans." Nagato was stunned. Granted, it had been quite some time since they graduated from the program and the leadership had divided them into small groups fighting on different fronts under various leaders. It was meant to give them experience, and also see who among them was more suited to leadership than others. Suffice to say, 10 names had came up and those included the 2 brothers. Yet a small part of Nagato felt disheartened on not being chosen, a feeling which didn't go unnoticed by his brother. "You wanted to be captain," stated Minato calmly. "Yes," answered Nagato honestly. No point denying something like this when his brother had clearly seen through him. "I asked them to choose you who are the strongest Spartan," revealed the blonde, but saw it wasn't enough for his brother who as expected decided to change the topic to avoid an argument. "Did the Mizukage bring you to this beach?" asked Nagato hesitantly, drawing a curious glance from his brother. "He did. He asked me as to what do I see beyond the ocean," said Nagato with a faint smile, and was quite surprised when his brother's eyes widened. "He asked me the same thing as well." "Creepy old bastard," muttered Minato, earning a hearty chuckle from his younger brother. "I told him I hoped to someday see a world free of war beyond the ocean. A world with which we could live in peace," answered Nagato honestly. "It's a beautiful world that you dream of," said Minato hesitantly. "What did you tell him, elder brother? What do you truly see beyond the ocean?" asked Nagato curiously. The blonde's fists clenched, and the hatred in his eyes was a mirror reflection of his heart. "Enemies. What lies beyond the sea are enemies, and we must kill them all if our people are to ever be safe. It's the only way to survive this cruel world of shinobi," answered Minato bitterly, his thoughts still lingering over the fate that befell their parents. "Even at the cost of your humanity? Even if it means becoming the very same monsters that you sought to exterminate? Even if it means becoming a devil?" asked Nagato, his voice mixed with sadness and a hint of curiosity towards his siblings' vision of the world they lived in. "The only one who can bring change is someone who can sacrifice what they hold dearest, their humanity, their dreams, or their life. Mother achieved the strength to face an army to save our village and gave up her life in return. The Mizukage chose the scorn of his people for creating us Spartans, yet that decision saved the lives of our shinobi. I'll gladly become a devil if it means securing the future of our people and for my family." That was my answer. He saw Nagato staring at him with a strange look on his face for a few fleeting seconds before giving him a gentle smile. "I'll be honored to follow you into battle," Captain promised Nagato. "You're not angry with me?" asked Minato cautiously, but his brother shook his head in denial. "I can see why the Mizukage chose you. I may be the strongest and have bright dreams, but you have the will to turn them into reality. You are the shinobi that shall keep moving forward until the last enemies of our people are destroyed, no matter the cost. There could be nobody better suited to lead the Spartans, who are the hope and pride of our people," explained Nagato proudly. Minato blushed and looked away, earning an amused chuckle from his sibling as both brothers watched their comrades play in the ocean, with Kushina leading the most wild ones. Looking at their comrades, they could not help but realize just how much they had sacrificed already to reach this far. Barely in their early teens, some even younger, most Spartans had been made to age a few years faster. Their bodies did not match with their age anymore, with many of them nearly 5.5 feet tall already, with broad frames courtesy of the genetic experiments and brutal training they had gone through. But even if their bodies had matured, their faces still held the fading glimpses of the children they once were. A painful reminder for the Yuzu villagers who felt responsible to an extent for this fate that befell upon the children for whom this village had been formed to protect. In that way, they had already sacrificed their childhood for the sake of their village's freedom. Freedom and hatred. Nagato could clearly feel these two emotions burning inside his brother like a raging tornado. And unlike him, the blonde had never been able to move on or forgive himself for what happened to their parents. No matter what he did, he could never make his brother abandon those feelings and live in peace in the present, which was the best they could do given the world they lived in. "Nagato, your brother is a stubborn fool. Stay by his side, promise me." He had made that vow to their mother all those years ago and felt himself smile when he thought of their last moments. A pledge that he upheld each day by making sure his lazy elder brother ate on time, didn't waste all his money on useless things, keeping annoying fangirls away from him among other things. Minato understood and valued those little things and tried to look after him in his own way. The blonde ensured they didn't end up on the street after their parents died, even if they weren't dirt poor, ensured Nagato was given the best of training, kept away the bullies during their younger years, regaled him with stories of his missions in the faraway lands as they fought this war, always volunteering for the most dangerous missions so that his little brother wouldn't have to take them and could survive this war even if Minato himself didn't. He caught sight of Kushina looking at his brother with a friendly smile, even going so far as to wave them both over once again. Nagato was more than happy to oblige, however was stopped when he saw his sibling was not inclined to follow. The conflict in the blonde's eyes easy enough for his younger brother to understand. "Let's just enjoy this moment," elder brother said Nagato with a pleasant smile, earning a resigned sigh from the blonde though a faint smile did arrive on his lips. "I never could say no to you," whispered Minato as he placed a comforting hand upon his brother's shoulder. They both raced towards the vast ocean to join their comrades, with Nagato instantly taking the lead by creating dark chakra wings across his back, much to his siblings' displeasure. Nagato felt satisfied on reaching the water first, only to find his brother standing right beside him, much to his bewilderment. He then glanced at the Hiroshin mark on his left shoulder. "Gotcha!" Both brothers couldn't contain their amusement and dissolved into cheerful laughter, only to be joined quickly by their comrades. Nagato watched his brother play water sports with some of the other Spartans as Kushina stepped beside him. "It's been a while since I have seen him this happy," said Nagato contentedly. But Kushina didn't miss some concern which her fellow Uzumaki was trying hard to hide. "What is it?" she asked. "Elder brother is chosen as our captain." Kushina was quite happy to hear that, as there was nobody more better suited for the task than Minato Namikaze. On the battlefield, he was decisive and swift. The ability to understand the situation and adapt to it was something he was better at than other Spartans. Most of all, there was no hesitation in his heart. "He reminds me of his favorite hero from the manga, at least on the battlefield." "Don't you think so?" asked Kushina curiously. Nagato blinked in surprise. It actually answered quite a few questions for whom even he didn't have answers till this date. The Battle of Ayajika, a conflict that had happened 2 years ago, and the event which started Minato's ascension to leadership. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, the Namikaze had achieved victory by inflicting heavy casualties on the enemy. He adapted his forces to the terrain and kept his strategy flexible. He also didn't hesitate to sacrifice his troops in kamikaze attacks whenever necessary and broke the enemy's morale. In the end, the blonde had allowed Danzo and his cronies to take full credit of the victory to maintain their alliance. Fierce, innovative, decisive, and bold, those were the pillars of his brother's leadership style. Those traits, the Spartan salute, the way in which his brother always kept some distance from fellow Spartans, unlike the emotional attachment he had towards Nagato and Kushina. In normal life, his brother was a completely different person, but Nagato could now see after whom his sibling had modeled himself as a fighter and a leader. "I couldn't have picked a better role model," said Nagato with a proud smile. "Just hope he doesn't start shouting Susum," quipped Kushina, sarcasm dripping from her voice. Nagato laughed, as he could very well imagine his brother using that war cry under the right circumstances. Thunderous lightning rained from the skies amidst a heavy storm that drenched the island nation in its fury. Wild waves rushed from the sea towards a never-ending quest to conquer the land. On the beach stood the Mizukage, holding in his hands twin blades made of the finest steel in the world. With great pride and hope, he looked at the fully armed Spartan in front of him. Around them were each and every other Spartan, a witness to this moment of their village's history. Hanzo Uzumaki walked towards the blonde warrior, who respectfully knelt before him in the cold water without a flinch. The redhead Kage raised the sharp blades before placing each upon the Spartan's shoulder. "Let the seas protecting our great nation and the shinobi that defend its freedom be witness to your oath," commanded Hanzo, making the blonde boy look at him with a determined gaze. "I, Minato Namikaze, son of Yahiko Uzumaki, swear to defend the freedom of this great nation. I shall be the sword of my leaders and the shield of my people," pledged the blonde with conviction burning in his eyes. Minato saw his brother looking at him proudly, and for a moment he saw the shadows of their parents around him. Just for that fleeting second, he felt complete, only for it to vanish. Yet instead of sorrow, it only brought him more conviction. He felt the weight of the blades upon his shoulders and what they truly meant. He couldn't allow this nation and its freedom to be threatened, for it was the dream for which his parents gave their lives. He saw the way in which his comrades looked at him, and for the first time he saw himself becoming something more in their eyes. "Arise, Captain Fox." A fierce pair of red eyes gazed into the Mizukage's eyes as the boy got up and offered him the Spartan salute. A wave of cheers erupted from the Spartans around them as they rushed in to congratulate their new leader, and soon enough they had hoisted the blonde upon their shoulders for a victory march. Nagato watched the Mizukage step beside him as both of them saw the celebration in content. "I've never seen him smile like this in a long time," said Nagato with a happy smile, as he watched his brother actually basking in the cheering and for once letting go of the guilt he always seemed to carry for something he had no control over. "He's lucky to have a brother like you," praised the Mizukage kindly. "I'm not the only one," said Nagato with a pleased smile. The Mizukage looked back at that strange remark and adopted a knowing smirk when he saw Minato standing in front of Kushina. Even an idiot could see the girl wanted nothing more than to kiss the blonde, but settled for only extending a handshake amongst the curious and few teasing gazes of fellow Spartans. "Hug her, you fool!" Hanzo chuckled when he barely heard the silent curse that escaped from Nagato's lips and was further amused when Minato simply shook the girl's hand in a friendly manner. "Idiots!" The younger brother had enough of the antics and marched towards them purposefully, and released his frustration by grabbing Minato and Kushina in a bear hug under his arms, earning amused chuckles and knowing looks from their comrades which only made the two idiots blush and look away. Minato sighed in relief as he crashed at the comfortable seats in the bar alongside his grinning brother. They chuckled on seeing Yamato and a few others tripping over themselves after the dozen crates of liquor they had consumed. Most of the others had already passed out after their wild party, all paid for by the Mizukage himself as a personal thanks for their service to the village. "That was fun," said Minato with a contented sigh. "I guess it was," agreed Nagato wholeheartedly, as he smoked some very contraband stuff. Nagato merely rolled his eyes at his brother's shocked expression on seeing him smoke what was essentially just green plants. Strange how everything seemed so simple right now. It was so simple that even his usual by-the-book rule-abiding brother actually requested some for himself. "Not that this can keep either of us whacked for long," justified Minato with a sheepish smile. Nagato chuckled at that fact since their genetically enhanced bodies usually process toxins of any kind pretty quickly, and especially in his older brother's case, who had a very fast metabolism. "To Captain Fox," toasted Nagato, as he passed the joint to his brother, who accepted the same with a fake gracious bow. They both settled for enjoying the peace now that most of their comrades were knocked out cold from their ridiculous rave party, with only the most craziest ones still going at it like there was no tomorrow. "Where's Kushina?" asked Minato curiously. Nagato snorted, which earned him a curious glance from the blonde. The redhead felt quite bold, in part due to his high state and the casual look his brother was giving him, despite knowing deep down that both idiots had some feelings for each other. She had been by their side from the very start, and had never left ever since. Nagato would be lying if he didn't consider Kushina as one of his closest friends who had looked out for them all these years. Nearly everybody except his brother could see how much the girl liked him. Nagato loved his brother, but his lack of ability to notice the obvious in this case irritated him. No more than that, it was his brother's fear of getting emotionally attached to anyone else after the death of their parents worried the redhead. Something broke inside his brother the night their mother died, and he had never been the same after. He got a lot more protective of his last family, and always maintained some distance from everyone else. Kushina came close to breaking that wall he had put between his heart and the rest of the world, only to be pushed away time and time away. Tonight had been the final straw, and his brother still didn't realize his mistake, or didn't want to think about it. Nagato was not going to have any of that foolishness anymore. Left after watching how cozy you were getting while dancing with Matsuri, snapped the redhead. He enjoyed watching his brother wince for a moment, only to feel bad when the blonde looked guilty, earning a comforting pat from his sibling. "We are shinobi, elder brother. Our future is uncertain. For once try to listen to your heart," admonished Nagato with a tired sigh. "I'm her commanding officer," protested Minato, only to receive an exasperated look from his brother. "Like the Mizukage cares, truth is he doesn't, as long as it doesn't affect our duties." "She cares about you, and I know you like her," pointed Nagato flatly. "We're just friends, and it's perfectly normal for us to care about each other," Minato tried to reason. "Oh, if you're just friends, then why did you refuse Matsuri's advances for tonight? Why, instead of talking about anything else, you asked me where Kushina was, and just for a moment you winced a little on hearing she went home after seeing some other kunoichi getting cozy with you," scolded Nagato. Minato grimaced at that harsh remark and couldn't help but feel guilty again. They had been in this fight together for years, always watching each other's backs. She was the one that was most happy on hearing of his promotion, and the pride in her eyes at that beach was something he had greatly cherished. He had wanted nothing more than to kiss her right there, only for his fear of experiencing any more pain to stop him. "She deserves better." His last resort at denial earned him a smack from his brother, who only went on to give him a deadpan look. "Nagato, mother wanted you to be happy, elder brother. Please fulfill her wish." Nagato hated himself for using the same emotional blackmail route for guilt-tripping his brother into doing something that would bring him happiness. The Mizukage had used it for the village's benefit, and the younger redhead's only saving grace was the fact that his brother liked Kushina too, judging from the way he always looked at her when he thought nobody was watching. But Nagato had and wanted nothing more than for Kushina to truly become a part of their family. It was lonely enough with just him and his brother. He bore the furious glare that Minato gave him for that remark before the blonde swiftly stomped off right outside the bar, Hopefully he wouldn't be too mad when Nagato saw him again. Kushina returned to her apartment completely exhausted. It was way past midnight, and some of the Spartans were still celebrating at the party thrown by their new captain. Nagato had introduced everyone to heavy drinking matches, and it had only gotten out of control with young teenagers having the strength of near adults, at least physically. She herself had enjoyed the evening to the fullest, even managing to steal a dance with Minato. Everything had been going so well, they had been so close to each other, and she was sure her heart was not the only one that was beating at an alarming pace in that moment. She was not mistaken or imagining things, as she had seen Minato lean towards her during their dance for just a moment to kiss her, only to be interrupted by that bitch Matsuri. The other Spartan, Kunoichi, had nearly demanded a dance for herself, and Minato had been too polite to decline, unaware or not caring of Kushina's own feelings. She had not missed his surprise or his relief at that interruption, and had allowed Matsuri to explore his body more than necessary during their dance. It was as if he was pushing her away deliberately, despite knowing that she had some feelings for him, and maybe he had some for her as well. It was too much to bear, and she had walked away. She tensed when a knock sounded on her door. On instinct she channeled her chakra and was shocked on realizing the chakra of the person outside. She hesitantly opened the door only to see him standing there, completely drenched in the heavy rain falling from the skies. Minato? He shivered a tiny fraction when a cold gust of wind passed through them, and it made her spring into action. She quickly made him come inside and made him grab a seat on the couch. Within seconds, a fresh towel was thrown his way and she rushed into the kitchen to make some hot coffee, just the right thing to warm him up and also something he really liked to have. The blonde could only watch in silent admiration as she brought them 2 mugs of steaming coffee. He had dried himself by then, even divesting himself of the useless shirt, leaving him topless. He saw her blush, but the way in which she chose not to comment any further went to show his brother might have been right about this. He really felt extremely comfortable in her company, and she understood him on a level he didn't think her to be capable of. Kushina instead focused on making sure he had his coffee, and only when he was finished and his body was suitably warm did she look at him curiously. Always putting me ahead of your own desires. I'm not an easy person to deal with, yet you have stuck with me this long. I am thankful for that, he said hesitantly. In hindsight, he should have thought of a plan before appearing at her doorstep. You didn't have to come all this way to say this. We're friends and we look out for each other, she replied casually, trying very hard not to get her hopes up. She saw him mutter something incoherent before he looked at her with fear, determination, and affection in his eyes. I want us to be more. Kushina went ghostly pale on hearing those precious words spoken barely in a whisper. It was all she had wanted for a long time, yet something made her stop the rising happiness and look at him seriously. Are you sure about this? She asked, in a last effort to offer him a way out. She had a feeling this confession had been put into action to some extent by a certain redhead who was going to be worse than dead if this exploded in her face. No. Her heart shattered, but before tears could arrive in her eyes, he stepped closer and took her hands in his own. It's nothing to do with you, but me. I am afraid of losing the ones I love, not after what happened to my mother. I can't go through something like that again, he confessed sadly. She couldn't fault him for that, yet also knew they could never be together if this was how he felt. They were shinobi with an uncertain future in a time of war. But despite my fears, I want to be by your side. My brother is my strength, but you gave me joy in a life of war and death. I'm not sure if I can overcome my guilt or fears, but if it's you, then I want to be better. I want us to be happy together. I want us to try, he explained, hoping against all odds that she would not take this the wrong way. For a moment, she remained silent and his heart sank. But when she smiled, he felt as if someone had breathed life back into him. He doesn't hesitate. He dips down, occupies her mouth without a hint of hesitation, and pulls her tightly against him, his naked chest rising to meet hers. Their hands wage a fierce war to divest them of most of their clothes as they continued in a tangled mess towards her bedroom. There was no order, no direction, but just a wild thrill flowing through their hearts. For once in their lives, they were not Spartans but just 2 people who cared deeply about each other. His hand slips down to unfasten her bra, runs around under it to loosen it from her ribs, plays a little under the fabric with the soft flesh, and then removes it. She was thankful for their training even in the sexual arts, otherwise it would have made her completely nervous when standing like this in front of him, especially him. She hides her hesitation and uncertainty about their future, taking strength from his affectionate gaze that had nothing but yearning and warmth for her. Kushina murmurs wordlessly in pleasure as his hand slips over the revealed curves, palming and then gently shaping and molding, pushes into his searching hand and holds his head to hers as if she's never going to let him go. In a way, his assertiveness was one of the many things that she loved about him. He was sure about what he wanted most of time, which was more than what most others his age could say about themselves. He felt her giving into him completely with a passionate kiss on his lips. He did the same, pushing power and passion into that kiss, taking her in his arms completely, showing her in every point of touch how much he has to give, how easy it should be for her to rely on him. His palm returns to molding her breast, fingertips gently teasing at her nipple till it hardens and peaks, repeats on the other side. His kiss is deep and sure, and she's tucked close enough to be kept warm from the heat of his body. He turns her into him again, and one long leg curls around him to hold herself close. He presses into her, and she shifts a little against the pressure, and opens a little more. One hand keeps her tight, stretched over the fine skin of her back so that her naked breasts are rubbing against his own bare chest. One slips down to stroke her slim rear and then through and into the heated, damp cleft between her legs, covered only by the thin, pale cotton of her panties. She moans softly, and moves to the rhythm of his hand as he works her up. He stops kissing her lips to turn onto his back and slide her over him, nipping teasingly behind her ear and no longer needing to hold her to him. Conveniently, this leaves both his hands free to pet and stroke, and so he does. One hand sweeps the length of her back to as far down the silk of her inner thigh as he can reach. The other continues to wander lazily over her ass and the damp fabric, sliding and pulling it. Her small sexy noises captured by his mouth on hers, and then the panties are lost. He doesn't stop kissing her as he rolls them onto the bed to put her beneath him, where he can transfer his tantalizing little kisses from lips to neck to shoulders and collarbones, marking each inch for himself to remember. He moves lower, smiling against her, and finally puts his mouth to her breasts again. This time she arches up into him, soft murmurs of encouragement becoming less soft and more breathless. He tugs a little and nips very carefully and sucks harder, and she likes that. She may not be badly marked, her skin pale and perfect, but he will have half-moon bruising on his back, a finger length below his shoulders. Her words, such as they were, have degenerated into occasionally cut with pleasurably calling out his name. He's deliberately slow. He wants her to enjoy it, and he wants to enjoy her without rushing things tonight. Her stomach muscles tighten under the trail of his tongue. Her hands are clamped around his head, and she knows where he's going with this, twisting under him as he smiles lazily up at her. Lie back and enjoy it, he says happily. I will, and I'll make sure you will. He prevents any commentary on that by taking one slow, forceful lick across her. She definitely enjoyed that. His hands lie lightly, for the moment, on her legs. He wriggles into the most effective alignment, teasing and taking her with his wicked, mobile, flexible mouth, with a twist of his tongue around her overstimulated nerves which makes her cry out, with slow licks and circlings and sucking and a little penetration which causes her to writhe and then arch and then shatter completely. He slithers up the bed and cuddles her in firmly. She wriggles a little to fit more comfortably against him, her head on his pectoral, a leg thrown over his, an arm draped over his ribs, the whole of his cushion snuggled against him in the way he'd wanted. He returns to slow, swooping strokes over her back, running over the sharp protrusions of her vertebrae and then the soft satin of her translucent skin. Shortly, she starts to curve into his easy stroking. She shifts a bit over him, and the hand that used to be around his ribs essays some stroking of its own, first of pecs and the flat nipple to be found there, then towards his hip, and then inward until her clever fingers close around him. She emits a satisfied, sexy little noise, and he can feel her smiling ferally against his skin. And then he very definitely feels a sharp nip on his chest and a tongue soothing it, and he might have been slipping into the comforting pattern of stroking and snuggling, but he certainly isn't anymore. He is very much wide awake. He becomes even more awake as her wicked hands slide up and down, gripping just tightly enough to hint at that tighter, hotter grip to come. She plays a little, teasing over and then under to stroke full, heavy weight, and his breathing deepens and turns harsher, his grip on her tighter, stronger. The soft tips of her fingers contrast with the scrape of her fingernails, the contrast driving him up, firing his blood. He flips them over, for her to be spread out beneath him, desire in her face and seduction in her touch, and there's no more comforting, simply hard hot motion. He pushes into her as she arches into him, a tight glove squeezing around him, and it's perfect. She pulls his head down to her lips and kisses him, till he reverses the polarities and takes her mouth in time with his stroking into her body, and she opens completely and takes him home, digs her fingers into the firm muscle of his back as he thrusts, and he groans and she moans and his fingertips find the bundle of nerves so that it changes to a cry, and she clenches about him, and it's all gone in the white heat rush of her and him, and them together. Afterwards, she's cozily cuddled into him, wrapped up close and held firmly. Finally, the stiff tension between them all these years had been released. He amuses himself by dropping little kisses on her hair and intermittently trailing his fingers over a mildly ticklish point on her waist, which makes her wriggle and squeak. Otherwise, she's utterly boneless and still. Did you know you purr when you're happy? Just like a cat, he says, not entirely innocently. Purr? Yes. You should let me stroke you till you purr a lot more often. He demonstrates with a soft trace over her breasts and back again. She makes an inadvertent small noise that is quite close to a purr, so he continues until it's quite definitely a contented purr. See? You like it, so you're happy, so you purr. Which I like, so I'm happy too, he carries on. So does the purring. The stroking becomes a little more determined, and reaches a little further down, and the purring stops being purring and starts to become panting and then gasping and then writhing against his wicked touch, and then becomes a long sigh of release. She's fallen asleep, still in his arms. When she wakes, he'll still be there. So will his issues, but she was worth the fight against his inner demons. He curls around her, large and solid, enveloping her slighter form, protecting her even as he falls into sleep himself. Few months later, Minato found himself standing inside the Mizukage's office alongside his brother and few of the other more experienced Spartans like Kushina. Their Kage alongside his counselors looked at them for a few long moments before explaining the reason behind summoning them at such a late hour. As you are aware, ever since the fall of the first Reikage few weeks ago, the embers of conflict between our villages were dwindling. Lord Hokage and the new second Reikage were even trying to negotiate a ceasefire, the effects of which you have clearly seen due to the reduced number of battles these past few days between Konoha and Yuzu with Kumo. To finalize a peace deal, a summit was organized 2 days ago between the two Kages, revealed the Mizukage seriously. Kumogakure can't be trusted. Hashirama is a fool if he thinks those bastards will honor any peace deal for a long time. It's just a ruse to rebuild their forces that have suffered great losses and start another war, protested Minato fiercely, gaining a satisfied look from the elder Uzumakis in the room. I'm afraid you are right, son. I am sad to report that the summit was attacked by the Kinkaku and other shinobi loyal to the first Reikage. Additional details are still being confirmed, but what we do know is as follows. The second Reikage was killed, Hashirama was captured, and this failure has in turn increased the possibility of the war prolonging, which is something that we cannot afford at any cost, revealed the Mizukage. The Spartans grimaced. It was true that while they had been successful in defending their island nation from Kumogakure, but they had suffered heavy losses. Nearly half of their ninja force was either dead or incapacitated, the rest were either not the best, were inexperienced, or just too young. The only reason they had survived this long was due to the enemy concentrating majority of its vast forces and tailed beasts to the war on the Land of Fire's borders, leaving Yuzu with just the task of defending itself instead of taking part in the heavy fighting. The Uzumaki clan had tried to honor this respite by aiding their staunch allies through Spartan support for various offensive operations throughout the war and helping with supplies. If Hashirama was used to put that crucial ally out of the war, Yuzu was doomed. No matter how skilled the Spartans were, they and what was left of their village's forces could not hope to defeat the entirety of the Land of Lightning's military, civilian and shinobi alike should they descend upon their tiny island nation. The Mizukage was satisfied on seeing his troops arrive at the same conclusion that their leadership had. Hashirama has to be rescued, said Minato bitterly. Yes. Konoha would probably buckle if Kumo threatens Hashirama's life. We can't have that. For all their military might, they don't have a paramilitary force that can infiltrate deep behind enemy lines and rescue Hashirama, stated one of the elders without hesitation. Minato clenched his fist shut when he saw the Mizukage pointing at the area on the map where they suspected Hashirama was being held prisoner. It was deep behind enemy lines, far away from the sea or friendly borders, in an area full of dangerous mountains and unfamiliar terrain. Their intelligence unit barely had been able to put together a general summary of the terrain and possible enemy presence. The unknown variables were too great for his instincts to just ignore. The elders either didn't seem to care or worse, were perfectly aware of the risks. He didn't want to consider which was the worst outcome. What about reinforcements? It will not be easy locating Hashirama in such a vast area in time. Say that we are able to pull such a miracle. It's foolish to assume he would be lightly guarded. We can take on scores of ninjas on our own, but the Kinkaku would be real trouble should they be present there. It could backfire and get the hostage alongside us killed, protested Nagato, his voice having a certain edge that earned him a glare from the elders. Then we are glad that you were not chosen as the Spartan leader, boy. Such pessimism does not suit a true shinobi, snapped Miza Uzumaki in her tart voice, says the hag that sits behind a desk. The older woman's eyes widened at that insult but was silenced into submission by one cold glance of the Mizukage, who then went on to give the same look to the young Uzumaki in front of him. Misa may have chosen the wrong words, but she did say the truth. It's not up to you to decide, Nagato. That decision lies with Captain Minato Namikaze. I can order you to do it, but you know it needs to be done, don't you, Minato? Asked the Mizukage with a resigned look on his face. The Spartans and the elders both looked at the blonde for an answer, and watched him sigh before looking at their village leader without any fear. I won't lead my men into this mission without assured reinforcements should we encounter serious danger. Kushina smiled and saw Nagato giving the elders a smug look. All eyes then turned towards the Mizukage, who looked into the blonde's fierce stare before nodding. Very well. 5th Battalion shall be stationed near the borders for your support should the need arise. One of the elders got up from their seat and bowed before leaving to carry out the said command from their leader. We'll get him back, promised Minato, earning firm nods from the Spartans. I know you don't like the man, Minato. Even I don't agree with many of his decisions and hate that those actions placed us in this situation. Yet this must be done, for the sake of our nation's future. Too many people have died for that to go in vain. Nagato and the other Spartans saluted their village leader, following the cue of their captain, who now looked determined to see this mission through against all odds. The younger Uzumaki despised the way in which the Mizukage had just manipulated his brother by playing on his self-induced guilt and pain over their parents, who died protecting this village. But the decision was made. Minato swiftly turned around and marched outside the office, making his comrades follow after him. Only once they were gone did Misa Uzumaki turn towards the Mizukage with a shrewd look on her face. 5th Battalion was nearly wiped out last week, Hanzo. The Mizukage aged nearly a decade on being reminded of that well-kept secret that they had hidden from their struggling village, and closed his eyes for a few long moments before looking back at his fellow clansmen with a resigned gaze. All the more reason this needs to be done by the Spartans. Minato found himself standing in the briefing room after having just now finished the explanation of their upcoming mission to his various platoon leaders. Suffice to say, none of them looked confident about their odds or the nearly impossible task given to them. Captain, this is too risky even for us, said Hate Uzumaki, the leader of the finest trackers amongst the Spartans. I second that. If we are discovered before we find the hostage, the enemy could very well kill him to prevent us from rescuing him. No matter our efforts or justification for the failure, Konoha would not take it lightly. Knowing how subservient our leadership is towards the Senju clan, it wouldn't be a surprise if they offered our heads as a necessary sacrifice to appease those sin, just warned Kasumi Uzumaki, the leader of the most dangerous Spartan marksmen. Her mistrust towards the leadership had always vexed quite a few of her comrades, but today there were no arguments being made against her warnings. All of what you say is true, but the fact remains that we have to do this or we will doom our village to destruction eventually. There is no choice, whispered Kushina Uzumaki, the leader of the most skilled close-quarter combat specialists. There are no easy choices here. We shall follow your lead like always, Captain. You have not let us down once, reassured Nagato Uzumaki, the leader of the Spartan scouts and assassins. The Spartan captain glanced at his 4 sub-commanders, each having raised their own opinions and concerns. They were all right in their own way, and in the end it all fell down to his choice. The risks were enormous, but if they backed down, they gave Kumogakure a chance to actually win this war. If that happened, all the sacrifices throughout the years and the death of his parents and fellow comrades would go in vain. We cannot stop until the last of our enemies are destroyed. The fate of our nation depends on it. We swore to risk everything we had for the sake of our people, our families. We cannot fail them, said Minato fiercely, but a cold pair of red eyes silenced any dissent in Kasumi Uzumaki's voice as a chill went down her spine. The decision has been made. Obey the chain of command. 4 fists thumped against their respective hearts as the platoon leaders rose in unison to give the Spartan salute in acknowledgement of his command. They may either agree or disagree on the decisions of this mission, but what they couldn't ignore were the orders of their commanding officers. Even if they were nearly being sent on a suicidal mission, their only solace was the trust they had in each other's abilities and the successful track record of their captain, who had never failed a mission before against any odds. As long as he was there to lead them, they might just be able to pull this through. Midnight, the entire Spartan force stood at the ready in front of their captain, who inspected them once before giving a satisfactory nod of approval on seeing they all looked ready to complete the task assigned to them. Minato himself looked at his flexible wing device, FWD, and other important gear only to find everything to be in place. He looked back at his grizzled veterans and was glad to see they didn't need any speeches. They had been through enough battles to make them ready to face any obstacle the missions might throw upon them. It was what they were trained to do. He looked back at his village, and his desire to see this through only rose further, as the sight of their home reminded him of the sacrifice made by their parents to protect it. Advance. Chapter 28, Operation Thunderbolt. 1 week later, behind enemy lines' land of lightning. Nagato and his platoon landed back at their temporary base camp created on one of the most harshest and coldest mountain in the entire sector. Its harsh terrain prevented the enemy from establishing anything more than a checkpoint at the base of the mountain since temperatures at the top were unbearable for their shinobi. However, the Spartans were genetically enhanced to survive in harsh weather such as the one they were currently under. Moreover, their strong Fuinjutsu barriers prevented the worst of the environment from affecting their base camp. It had allowed them to launch scouting missions in an effort to locate Hashirama, but only during the darkness of the night. Trying such a thing in broad daylight would be suicide. Intelligence had really messed up big time with their highest estimate of enemy forces not even coming close to the ground reality. The nearest harbor bordering the ocean was a fortress manned by a heavy garrison. That eliminated the possibility of them managing to sneak in undetected and evacuating their target via the port overboard a civilian vessel, preferably one of trade. The rest of the entire sector had checkpoints and small garrisons stationed everywhere since the extremely important diamond mines that were one of the key wealth generation source of this nation were located in this region. All of it was controlled under the strict supervision of a base command located in the Shadow Valley. Approximate enemy presence was anywhere between 3,000 shinobi and another 1,000 non-shinobi fighters. The nearest border leading towards the Land of Fire was located 1,000 kilometers away, manned by rocky mountains and impossible terrain full of dangerous swamps, cave-ins and hidden valleys. It was a death trap. The deeper one went in, the harder it would be to get out. It would have been a suicidal mission for a ground rescue unit, but for a paramilitary force like the Spartans this was only another challenge they had to overcome. Nagato found his sibling in his tent completely invested in studying the latest mission report in his hand. "How are we looking?" He chose not to smile or comment on seeing Kushina present there as well, sitting on the other side of the tent happily eating her dinner. His brother saw right through him and glared, which only made Nagato smirk victoriously for being the one who pushed these two idiots to accept their feelings for each other. Most of the other Spartans knew about it by now, but either didn't care or were sensible enough not to piss off their captain who had displayed his ruthlessness on quite a few occasions. Still not close enough to finding Hashirama. "Kemi knows where the bastards have kept him prisoner," cursed Minato, as he frustratedly tossed the report aside, having gained nothing of importance from the paper. Nagato set that paper on fire and turned it to ash without a word or hand sign, earning a thankful nod from his brother. "Let me scout the main base command in Shadow Valley. There are rumors of a secret cave there deep inside the mountains. Hashirama could be there," proposed Nagato. "No." His jaw clenched on hearing the outright denial and the stone-cold refusal in his brother's gaze. "Elder brother, we chose this mission. We must walk on it till the very end for the sake of our village," pleaded Nagato, trying a peaceful approach instead of calling out his brother's emotions that were affecting his decision. If it had been any other Spartan making the same proposal, the blonde would have at least heard them out instead of the flat denial that Nagato had received. "Then I will do it," replied Minato stubbornly. "You're our captain. The chain of command must remain intact. More than that, this task does not require speed but stealth. Something which I am better at than you." The redhead turned himself into smoke and spread across the entire tent, erasing any physical evidence of his presence in the area, but he was there closely watching their each move. Minato clenched his fist on being reminded of his brother's unique powers, the captain in him not being able to deny the usefulness of this ability. It was far better to send in an operative like Farik on this instead of an entire squad. They needed information before making their move. This was the way to get it. He looked at Kushina and saw she shared his dislike for this route of action being proposed by Nagato. However, the redhead still gave him a reluctant nod which made the decision for him. "Find him." Nagato smiled and offered a respectful salute. His brother gave a simple nod in return, but the worry in his eyes clearly didn't go unnoticed by the younger redhead. "I'll call for you if I'm in trouble," promised the boy as he pointed at the Hirshin mark on his shoulder, and was relieved when his brother relaxed at that reassurance. "You better. I plan to enjoy our retirement days after this war experimenting my cooking on you," warned Kushina playfully. Minato smiled on hearing his brother's nervous laugh at that demand/threat made by their female friend. Kushina was many things, but she had a long way to go before being able to cook anything not life-threatening. Minato waited at the edge of the forest near the enemy's headquarters alongside Hate and Kasumi with a few of their troops. The group was keenly observing the heavily fortified area where Nagato had just sneaked into, much to the Spartan leader's worry, even if he was trying his best to conceal it. "It's strange the way they gave our codenames, Captain. The brass sure has a twisted sense," commented Kasumi playfully. "What do you mean?" asked Minato curiously, momentarily brought out of his worries. Hate smiled at his fellow Spartans' tactic of easing their leader's stress and decided to join into the ongoing conversation. "Yeah. They named you Fox despite knowing your family's connection to another animal, said Hate, having heard a few stories of Inoue Namikaze and her wolf summoning contract. Rumor was that one of her sons had inherited that animal contract, much to the village's delight. What more can you expect from bureaucrats and politicians? Lazy assholes, complained Kasumi, drawing an amused smile from the blonde Namikaze. Thank you, both of you, replied Minato sincerely. Does this mean we get to snatch some of those diamonds? Could be a good retirement source, suggested Hate with a smirk. We are going to destroy the mines. Kasumi sighed at their dear leader's decision, even if it made the most sense. It was all about strategy and long-term vision for their captain. You want to cripple these bastards financially? Asked Hate. Saving Hashirama won't be enough as long as these bastards can again gather up the money required to start another war. Your platoons are to carpet bomb the mines, checkpoints and small garrisons in the area. Keep any reinforcements from reaching their base command in Shadow Valley while making them assume it's an all-out attack instead of precise counterstrikes. Once you have accomplished that goal, you are to fall back to base camp and wait for me and the remaining platoons to link up with you and the HVT, high-value target, instructed Minato. I assume stealth is not a practical option, quizzed Kasumi. Don't underestimate the enemy's capability too much like our elders did, Hawk. At some point we will be discovered one way or another, and I want it to happen on our terms in order to control the field situation. Understood, Captain? So we light up the mines and garrisons, making base command here send reinforcements to their aid, which allows you and the others to sneak through in order to grab the HVT. Sounds like a lot of work and risk to me, teased Hate playfully, earning a challenging glance from his captain. Are you complaining? Asked Minato curiously. Nope, answered Hate confidently, earning a nod from Kasumi as well. Minato looked at his officers, and behind their heavy silence was the weight of the risk they would be undertaking. It had to be done and they knew it, but still. We'll be fine, Captain. I'll get our boys out of there safely if things get too hot, promised Hate confidently. Same with me and my girls, assured Kasumi with a smile. Thank you. It was all he could say in the current situation, a truth which his officers accepted with grim nods. Nagato found himself surrounded by his brother and every other Spartan once he returned to their base camp. In their eyes he could see a series of questions for him, and he decided it was better to tell the full truth. I found him. Excitement spread across the crowd with only Minato looking at him with a knowing gaze. His brother had caught on to the concern that Nagato was trying to hide. He is guarded by the Kinkaku. The hammer was dropped, and to their credit not a single Spartan flinched or cowered, but their excitement did vanish quite quickly, being replaced by a sense of foreboding. They only became more somber once Nagato revealed additional details of what they were actually going up against. The heavy silence that followed was making quite a few of them uncomfortable, until their captain stepped forward. Myself, Tiger and Ghost alongside a portion of their platoons shall rescue the HVT by infiltrating the enemy base command, ordered Minato, referring to Nagato and Kushina by their codenames. The rest of you shall attack the diamond mines, checkpoints and garrisons under the leadership of Lion and Hawk. Your objective is to cause havoc and act as a credible diversion. Draw as many of the enemy troops away from their base towards your locations to allow the infiltration team to get in and rescue the HVT. At some point, we will encounter the Kinkaku, and I want their reinforcements to be as minimum as possible in order to deal with them. I'm attaching 1/4 of Spartans from Tiger and Ghost platoon to your group to bolster our ability to fight here. Understood? Asked Minato seriously. We will get it done, Captain, promised Kasumi, Hawk, with a salute, earning confident nods from her platoon members. As planned, we will cause as much destruction possible, followed by drawing the enemy towards this mountain in order to reduce the pressure on the infiltration team. The traps that we have set these past few days should help us hold them off long enough for you guys to link up with us. Together, we can execute a pincer move with you attacking them from the rear and us from the mountain top, followed by us taking to the skies with the HVT and accomplishing the mission, explained Hate, Lion, in a crisp and professional manner. Minato didn't miss the way in which the morale of the troops was bolstered when they heard Hayate's explanation of their strategy, his confidence and inner strength. The higher-ups may have messed up with their codenames in most cases, but there was none that could be more suitable for this Spartan in front of him. Lion, you'll be in charge of this move. Hawk and her troops shall also follow your command. Hate Uzumaki blinked at that decision, and was even further surprised when Kasumi accepted to be under his command even though they were of the same rank. He looked at his captain, and was reassured when the blonde gave him a firm nod. He thumped his fist against his heart, accepting the decision. Kushina watched Minato step forward and shake hands with each Spartan, as was the custom they had established before embarking into any battle. He hugged each of the officers before looking at them all with a fierce determination in his eyes that made them all stand more taller and feel stronger. No matter what happens from here on out, Whether we live or die, Kumogakure shall remember that 125 Spartans did the impossible tonight. That upon this land we fought for the freedom of our nation, that for its tomorrow we gave our today. The end of this war shall be our tribute to our nation as its loyal shinobi, roared Minato, as he thumped his fist against his heart. The cold mountain air cackled as the Spartans saluted back. Minato nodded at them one last time before turning around and charging fearlessly towards the mountain's edge, flanked by Nagato and Kushina, and followed by Hate alongside Kasumi and every Spartan behind them. Half an hour later, the sound of explosions rocked the entire valley. Minato saw the plume of smoke rising in the distance, a proof of Hate launching his attack. Determined, he looked at his men and received firm nods in return. They looked down from the skies to see the enemy headquarters springing to life with hundreds of ninjas emerging from their barracks, stations, and perimeters to counter the threat. He gave a warning glance to Nagato, whose hands twitched with the intent to rain fire and blood upon the enemy from the sky. Reluctantly, the boy pulled himself back, allowing the gathering enemy forces to rally around their leaders and charge towards Hate and Kasumi's direction. Execute. Kushina and her 10-strong squad performed a long set of hand seals before forming the ram sign in unison. Barrier arts. Dome. A light red-colored dome emerged from all directions and quickly enveloped the enemy headquarters except for a small portion of the top, much to the alarm of the remaining defenders of the base. Nagato grinned when his brother's cold, merciless eyes looked at him. Leave them to me, Fox, promised the redhead, as his hands stretched outward, unleashing a wave of ash-like chakra from his body. As the darkness descended upon the enemy, they were further alarmed when their attempts to call back some of their comrades failed, as the dome around their headquarters blocked all their communication. Few of the shinobi tried to use wind-based defensive moves in order to disperse the incoming wave of darkness, but only met with failure. Burn! One of the Kumogakure Jounin's eyes widened when the ash-like chakra ignited, engulfing large swaths of their base in its fury. Men and women screamed in agony as they were burned alive, and from amidst the smoke and ashes descended a different wave of attack. Nagato's unit joined the battle and engaged the shocked enemy into close-quarter combat. The ash-like chakra had spread everywhere, thereby reducing visibility to almost zero and making the remaining enemy soldiers fear for their lives, as any moment it could reduce them to dust. It was why they could not respond in time in most cases when the Spartan forces swarmed them at the speed of nearly 50 kilometers per hour. Most enemies had long left the world before their slashed necks or severed heads hit the ground. Minato watched the unfolding battle and noted the way Kushina and her group were not only maintaining the barrier blocking the enemy from calling for help, but also supporting Nagato's sweeping advance with accurate cover fire from their kunai launchers. It wouldn't be long before they cleared the outer base of all threats. That left him with the most difficult task. He glanced at the mouth of the cave hidden inside the side of the mountain where the HET was being kept. I'm going in. He flew across towards the mouth of the cave, shredding its perimeter guards in a hail of kunai fire. Within seconds, Nagato and half of his 10-man squad joined them as Kushina took over the other half of his men along with hers and leading the elimination of the remaining outer base defenders. Together, they stacked up against the entrance with Minato and Nagato at the front of their respective columns. Breach! Nagato blew a hole clean through the now sealed entrance courtesy of the explosive seal he had placed upon the rock. 2 Spartans from each side leaned towards the hole and fired a volley of smoke bombs as the Namikaze brothers charged in. The first thing they saw were a bunch of disoriented guards who were instantly silenced with 2 kunai to their hearts and 1 to their head. Even before the bodies hit the ground, more enemies came rushing out from hidden corridors but were cut down by the Spartans following the 2 brothers. Clear left, clear right, all clear! With their immediate area of engagement brought under control, the blonde Spartan looked at his sibling. Lead the way. Nagato nodded at that command as he took the lead towards the area where he had last seen Hashirama being kept prisoner. Along the way, they came across a series of well-laid-out traps in the forms of hidden spikes, secret underground tunnels and tripped wires connected to explosives. Had Nagato not scouted the location in advance, there was bound to be some damage the Spartans would have incurred as they stormed further and further inside the cave network. Everyone was on edge and ready to unleash hell, knowing the Kinkaku would meet them in battle sooner or later. If their past encounters were any indication, it was not going to be an easy fight, certainly not without losses. They all paused when Nagato raised his fist and slid to one knee. Minato sensed a foul aura rapidly advancing from all directions in the cave network. His troops felt the danger as well, judging from their alert stances. He saw his brother looking at him with a question in his eyes. Go dark, whispered the blonde Spartan captain. Nagato nodded as he performed a series of quick hand seals, releasing ash-like chakra from his body that quickly surrounded his entire group. Within seconds, their very presence was masked to the naked eye. Even their scents were hidden underneath the aura of Nagato's special chakra that mixed well with the foul chakra approaching towards them. The squad jumped towards the top of the cave and watched as howling creatures came charging out of the cave network. Minato grimaced as he recognized just what they were going up against as he saw the creatures crawling on all fours. Their entire body was covered in malicious chakra, giving them a monstrous form. Few even had small tails of the same energy. Their demonic eyes seeking only one thing. Food, whispered Nagato, earning a grim nod from his elder brother. So these are the failed human experiments of the Kinkaku program. Shinobi and warriors who couldn't master the Biju chakra that was implanted in their bodies. Their bodies and mind now completely overtaken by the foul energy whose only aim is to make itself more stronger by feeding on the chakra of others. Our enemy must be quite desperate and taken by surprise with our attack if they are unleashing these monsters so openly near Hashirama. We must move quickly before they extract him, thought Minato seriously. His eyes became red as he ordered Nagato to take the lead once more. Together and with great caution, the squad advanced further and further towards the eastern side of the network where there was a great cave and leading several stories down. Minato cursed when he saw one of the Kinkaku beasts actually started to crawl upwards towards the top. Few more followed suit and were now approaching towards their direction. They didn't seem to be aware of their presence yet, but would soon if the Spartans decided to continue their walk down the cave-in. Minato was the first one to let go and fell right down the hole. Not a moment later he was flanked by his brother and the rest of the squad. Nagato raised a hand sign making his chakra currently camouflaging his comrades to grow small wings across their backs that quickly pushed outwards against the air, thereby slowing their fall and making them land quite gracefully on the ground. Nicely done, whispered Minato encouragingly, as the blonde saw the Kinkaku beasts roaming at the top for a few more moments before losing interest and running off in another direction to search for their prey. The Spartan captain narrowed his eyes when he came across a narrow corridor marked by multiple cells on each side. Not surprisingly, a team of enemy agents were entering the area in order to extract their prisoner. Nagato fired from his kunai launcher, unleashing one sharp projectile right towards the alerted enemy troops. A whistling sound passed through the corridor, as the sailing kunai was easily avoided by the troops, only for a blonde shadow to emerge from the darkness over the flying kunai. Muffled screams and showers of blood erupted from their sliced throats as the entire team was taken out. Minato sheathed the twin blades across his back after wiping the blood from its steel, the twitching corpses of the Kumogaku team staring at him blankly. Nagato gestured towards the cell on the far right-hand corner, and the team stacked up against it on both sides. Just when one of the Spartans was about to place a breaching seal on the door, their captain stalled him. "What is it?" asked Nagato, as he saw his brother's red eyes fixated on the top of the door. "Sound trap. A hidden seal is entwined with this door that will set off an alarming sound of our presence. Every goddamn one of those monsters will be upon us in less than a minute. The Kinkaku probably want to tire us out before launching their attack," warned Minato. "Have got enough firepower to light them all up," reassured Nagato, earning firm nods from his squad members. Wordlessly, they took up defensive positions as Nagato gestured for his brother to proceed with the task at hand. Minato had to remind himself that these were the finest assassins he was fighting alongside with among the entire Spartan program. Not to mention Nagato himself. If only the enemy knew the true extent of his powers, they would think twice before engaging him and his squad in direct combat. "Very well. I'll get Hashirama out. He may not be in a good condition. Kushina will have placed the markers I gave her by now. First trip with the HVT. Next ones, I am coming back for you guys. Hang in there until then," ordered Minato. "Acknowledged, Captain," chorused the entire squad. Minato steeled himself as he slapped the breaching seal on the door and followed through with its controlled explosion. A piercing sound tore through the entire corridor, making everyone wince for a few seconds. Even before the echoes had died down in the cave network, a series of more terrifying roars descended upon them. The Spartan captain focused his attention to the task at hand as he stepped inside and was thankful for his gas mask, as the odor inside would have made him vomit otherwise. Piss, sweat and blood was raging in the entire cell, and there in one of the dark corners lay a man that was once called God of Shinobi. Minato was quite baffled on seeing the amount of suppression seals slapped all over the first Hokage's frail and scarred body in the form of runes. He was chained from head to toe, and one of his fingers was missing. Physical and mental torture were inflicted on the man without mercy, judging from his bruised body and dazed expression. Probably drugs were used as well. Tobirama. He winced on hearing the Hokage whisper his younger brother's name, a person who was Minato's own biological father. He had kept this secret from everyone, including Nagato and Kushina, despite his mother's wish of him seeking out the Senju heir. If word got out about his connection to Tobirama and through him to Hashirama the first Hokage and an important figure in the Land of Fire, then the Mizukage and the higher-ups may use this knowledge for their own gains. Something which could place his loved ones in harm's way. Captain Fox, USFC Spartan, he introduced himself, referring to the short acronym of their force. USFC Uzushiogakure Special Forces Command. Minato didn't wait for a response and got to work in freeing the hostage by pushing aside any personal thoughts or emotions. He had to, as the roars of the beasts were getting closer. A fierce exchange started when Nagato and his Spartans opened fire outside that was quickly followed up by painful screams and deafening explosions. Minato freed the hostage and lifted him atop his shoulders, which was no easy task considering the difference in their body frames. Hashirama was a foot taller and more broader. His weight was manageable, but the stink on him was strong enough to even make the gas mask protected Spartan gag. He stepped outside to see Nagato enveloping a large mass of the Kinkaku creatures with his special chakra. Ash release, scorching inferno. The remaining Spartans continued raining down kunai fire upon the enemies. The creatures, however, had lost their sense of pain as they kept on coming despite being shredded from head to toe, their bloodlust overpowering their sense of preservation. CQC! Commanded Nagato. His Spartans instantly threw the blades sheathed across their backs towards the approaching creatures as ash-like chakra enveloped the weapons which set the steel on fire. 5 Spartans charged forward until they suddenly vanished from the sight of the approaching monsters. The beasts were quite surprised when the burning swords crashed among their midst, only for the previously disappeared Spartans to emerge suddenly and unleash a bloody dance of murder. The nearest monsters were sliced in half as the 5 Commandos executed a 360-degree turn with their scorching blades in unison. Fire style. Raging shockwave. A stream of flames were fired from the burning blades that hit the second line of monsters right in the eyes. Before they could even scream in agony, the same blades were stabbed clean through their necks as the Spartans pushed their advance further fearlessly. Minato nodded at his brother on the fine execution as he raised a single-hand sign, making himself and Hashirama disappear from the cave. Just when Nagato turned back towards his squad, his eyes caught sight of a metallic device falling from the top of the cave. A shockwave sent him and his troops alongside the monsters sailing away. They all crashed upon each other, with Nagato instantly finding himself in a fight for his life as the mindless creatures tried to eat his head off, even while dazed and entangled with them all in a mass of limbs. One of the Spartans cried out in pain when the foul creatures bit his shoulder and ripped the flesh clean to the bone. To his credit, the teen fought back and buried his kunai launcher in the beast's face and unleashed one kunai right between its brain. Nagato roared, making more chakra escape from his body and envelope all creatures, currently keeping his squad pinned. In less than 5 seconds, they were all set on fire as the now shaken squad got back up on their feet to see another wave of creatures charging towards them. Shredder rounds, ordered Nagato quickly. They all raised their kunai launchers once more and locked in the second magazine before unleashing a barrage in unison. The weapons sailed towards the enemy and disintegrated into hundreds of smaller metallic fragments that rained upon the charging creatures, who howled in pain but still continued their advance despite a few of their own at the front getting trampled. Lizard! Rat! You're up! The 2 Spartan operatives joined one of their hands together while performing a unique set of signs with the other pair. Wind style, 1,000 blades. A powerful gust of wind was unleashed through the narrow corridor, shredding through skin, flesh, and even bones of the charging monsters. Blood and guts flew everywhere alongside horrifying screams until it was all over. The 2 Spartan operatives grimaced when another mass of creatures landed in front of them. The first of the creatures fell against the hail of poisoned kunai launched by the 2 Spartans, and yet their remaining monster brothers continued charging forward. As the Spartans prepared for close combat once more, they were surprised as a blur emerged from the approaching monsters and zoomed past them at inhuman speed. When they looked down, pain and disbelief overcame them as they saw their stomach be ripped open and blood rush out wildly. Their eyes widened in shock when a shadow appeared behind them with its sword ready to rip their heads off. Kinkaku. The sword advancing to end the Spartans clashed against a metallic fist guard instead of flesh. The Kumogakure operative saw a blonde shadow appear beside him, and its red eyes peered into his very soul. Minato sliced the enemy's head off before disappearing once again. Even before the body hit the ground, the Spartan captain appeared in front of the charging creatures with that severed head in one of his hands. Slapping a seal against its back, he threw it straight towards the approaching monsters, who leapt at it mindlessly, only for the explosive seal to erupt and end their miserable existence. It wasn't the end of the battle, as another wave of creatures had already taken formation, and among them Minato saw several pair of haunting demonic eyes looking at him with an intelligence that the others beside them didn't possess. Minato quickly flashed beside his two wounded operatives while looking at his brother and his remaining men. I'll take these two first. Scram, I'll be back for you in a minute. Move! As Nagato nodded and disappeared down the corridor with his three remaining comrades, Minato grabbed both his critically wounded operatives who were moaning in pain while trying to prevent their guts from spilling out. The Spartan captain glared furiously when the enemy charged at him. He closed his eyes before slamming his right hand on the ground. Water style, shockwave. As soon as the blonde vanished from the area, huge swaths of water emerged in full force from multiple points in the cave, hitting the approaching enemy. By the time Nagato and his remaining men found themselves transported outside the cave, they found a full-fledged battle raging all around them. The redhead immediately caught sight of his two wounded troops currently being tended to by Kushina. He attempted to help her only to be pulled back by his brother. Tiger, tighten our circle, commanded Minato. Nagato saw most of their forces had been spread at a distance courtesy of them trying to clear out the outer base defenders sector by sector earlier. Now with those creatures swarming them from all sides, it was difficult to effectively counterattack when they were spread so thin. Rage coursed through his heart when he saw one of his critically wounded commandos breathe his last in Kushina's arms before slumping down to the ground lifelessly. Spartans, on me! The war cry was heard by all as the redhead launched a tidal wave of fire that stopped the advance of the beasts for a moment. He then looked at his brother who nodded at him. Minato flashed beside Kushina as Nagato charged forward leading their counterattack against the enemy. Status, commanded the captain. 1 Kia. 1 critical. He won't last long without surgery since all his insides were sliced apart. HVT is in an extremely weakened state and at a risk of suffering from drug overdose. I am trying to stabilize them, but I need more time, replied Kushina without breaking her focus on her two remaining patients. Minato saw a few enemy squads had returned and were now trying to break through the barriers surrounding the base from outside. Reinforcements. He also felt the approaching chakra signatures of the Kinkaku Commandos from the cave. He then looked at his wounded Spartan and instantly realized that teleporting or flying him out any further was more likely to kill him instantly if the blood loss didn't do him in any sooner. The Spartan knew it too as he weakly raised one of his hands towards the blonde. Captain Fox, we're in trouble. You need to get out of there now. Hiate's stressed voice over the communication channel made the decision for him as he grabbed a small pouch from his back and slapped it into the Spartan's hand. Minato then gently lifted the boy upwards as he grunted in pain. Kushina helped him stand up as well and armed him with his kunai launcher once again. Go, Captain. Kushina averted her gaze even as she saw Minato clenching his fist painfully. How can I leave my partner behind? Asked the Spartan named Rat, as he glanced at his partner whose body lay cold on the ground. Another series of explosions made the barrier falter as Kushina looked at Minato in alarm. They may have named you Rat, but I will remember you, Jiang the Loyal, said Minato somberly, as he thumped his fist against his heart. The Spartan nodded respectfully as Kushina picked up a delirious Hashirama while signaling the order to retreat. Nagato intensified the fires protecting their perimeter, thereby increasing the smoke and ash in the area, which completely reduced the line of sight of the creatures. Using the momentary lapse, the Spartans retreated in full haste, with Minato being the last one to evacuate moments before the barriers collapse. His red eyes watching Rat drawing more and more enemy towards his position before detonating the explosive seal and posthumously taking with him nearly half of the enemy's base command. By the time they were close to reaching the mountain, which was the rendezvous point, Minato realized that the enemy had counterattacked quite strongly. It was more clear than ever when he saw the majority of his force led by Hate and Kasumi fighting a desperate retreat through the forest on foot and still quite a few kilometers away from the mountain. We must help them, urged Nagato, as he saw hundreds upon hundreds of enemy fighters on Hiate's rear. Ghost, take the HVT and our entire force to the rendezvous point. Tiger and I shall help Lion and his troops retreat safely, instructed Minato. Kushina looked at him searchingly for a moment, but relented on seeing his unwavering gaze. You are to evacuate with the HVT should we not return in 30 minutes, ordered Minato, looking at Hashirama's passed-out form currently being carried by Kushina. The redhead nodded reluctantly as she signaled the remaining Spartans to follow after her towards the mountain, leaving the brothers to carry out their task. We'll hold the line and allow the others to retreat, decided Minato. Maybe I should be the one to do it. That's an order. Obey. Nagato flinched at that icy tone, and the sheer anger burning in his brother's red eyes was enough to make the redhead pause instantly. Without wasting another moment, the blonde Spartan flew towards the forest, making his brother follow quickly on his heels. Don't. It's a trap. Kasumi's voice had barely reached their communication channel before a blinding light seared through their vision quite painfully. The brothers grunted in pain when they felt themselves getting hit by thunderous lightning raining from the skies. Their wing devices were instantly destroyed due to the sheer heat of the attack, which then burned through their armor and was about to seep into their uniform before Minato managed to make a hand sign, making himself and Nagato teleport away. Hate cursed when he saw his captain and Nagato flash beside him, tumbling gracelessly across the ground. A few of the nearby Spartans grabbed the two and helped stabilize them. "You okay?" he asked, even as the men around him continued to engage the swarming enemy forces. "The fuck was that?" asked Minato with a cough, as he tried to get his movement back in order by flexing his arms and legs. "Lightning strikes. Fried our winged devices in one single strike, hence the retreat on foot," replied Kasumi, as she helped the blonde stand back up as few of the other Spartans did the same for Nagato. Minato looked at the entire force and was alarmed when he saw the truth in those words. Each and every Spartan beside him was missing their winged devices, thereby reducing any chance of them flying out of here as originally planned. "The enemy expected us to rescue Hashirama and made sure to develop countermeasures for such an event," deduced Minato, unable to help but recognize the competence of their foe. "What do we do, Captain?" asked Kasumi seriously. The blonde glanced around and took stock of the battlefield quickly. They were being swarmed from multiple directions, thereby making the Spartans spread themselves thin, reducing their strength. The enemy was also making the situation more difficult by switching the strength of the attack from each direction every now and then, keeping the Spartans on edge and confused. This was having a direct impact on the morale of the Yuzu warriors and tiring them at an alarming pace. The tactics were slightly different, but more of the same, with regular Kumogakure shinobi and civilian fighters bearing the brunt of the damage while exhausting the Spartans. Sooner or later the true masterminds behind this strategy would reveal themselves when the time was right, and then it would be over. The fact that they had destroyed the Spartans' flying ability was a proof enough of their intentions. "Tiger, how much chakra you have left?" asked Minato. "Enough to burn a large part of this forest down," replied Nagato fiercely. "Do it." Minato didn't miss the way in which his three officers blinked at his command and decided to elaborate his plan further for their understanding. "Hawk, have your marksmen continue to keep the enemy engaged in order to make them assume their plan is working. Lion, have your troops carefully deploy explosive seals in these areas, while Tiger will spread his chakra across the forest slowly and wait for my signal to start the inferno," explained Minato, pointing at the locations where he wanted all three officers to execute his orders. Kasumi and Nagato nodded in unison, as their part of the plan was quite simple to understand. But Hate, while silent, gave his captain a knowing look. However, he didn't mention his thoughts until the other two had left to carry out their orders. "Placing the explosives like this only leaves a narrow path for the enemy to follow through upon to reach us. A choke point which will have to be defended by a small force which shall allow the majority of us to retreat. A textbook delay tactic which would have worked flawlessly had our wings not been destroyed, meaning the ones to stay back and hold the enemy in check will meet their end here," said Hate calmly. "No. I won't let that happen. I'll stay behind with a bunch of clones and hold them off long enough for you guys to retreat to a safe distance, or close to it," promised Minato resolutely. "You're our captain," protested Hate in alarm, making the blonde lower his gaze guiltily. "All the more reason it has to be me." "Don't worry, I'll catch up with you guys with my Hyrushin," reassured Minato with an eye smile. Hate clenched his fist tightly and glared hatefully at the enemy before looking back at his friend desperately. "What about reinforcements? I'm sure you must have signaled headquarters to send them in when we discovered the Kinkaku were here," pointed Hate, glancing at that ceiling scroll on Minato's hip which allowed them to transfer limited messages to their headquarters and receive orders in return, although at long intervals depending upon their distance. It was a highly classified piece of fuinjutsu developed by their Kage himself. The blonde captain showed his friend the scroll, shocking the boy when he saw the code for reinforcements clearly mentioned on the special paper by Minato, but there was no reply in return. "We are on our own." The fleeting look of betrayal that passed through Hayate's eyes was not something Minato would ever forget, and yet the very same man steeled himself and reloaded his weapon moments later before pointing at their comrades. "Let's get our boys home ourselves then." Minato nodded fiercely, some of his own resolve and determination flaring back to life on seeing the courage displayed by his friend and fellow Spartan officer even when their own motherland had left them to die. Hate quickly got to work and led his men in placing the explosives in the areas directed by his captain. As the final preparations were underway, Minato glanced at his sibling currently fighting fiercely against the squad of Jounin. The other Spartans were rallying behind him and were actually pushing the enemy back further and further. It made the decision for him as he glanced at the captain insignia on his right arm. "Forgive me, Kushina," he whispered sincerely, glancing back at the mountain where the redhead was waiting for them. With a war cry of his own, he jumped into the battle. Water style, tidal wave, He unleashed a massive water wave that swept away trees and the entire frontal line of the enemy force. Tiger, now! Nagato slammed his hands together, making the serpent hand sign, and glanced at the dazed enemy troops trying to recover from his brother's powerful attack. Ash release, inferno. A whistling sound pierced through the entire forest before a shockwave sent most of the Spartans flying backwards. A moment later their vision went blank when a blinding light spread everywhere, followed by screams of nearly 100 enemy shinobi echoing in horror and agony. Large swaths of the forest were set on fire, engulfing nearly 100 enemy shinobi in an instant. Many others tried to put out the fires trying to engulf them, but met with only limited success, as these were no ordinary flames. Nagato weakly grinned at his success before collapsing to his knees due to sheer exhaustion, his chakra reserves being reduced to dangerous levels. He quickly gulped a soldier pill to restore his energy, but it would still be a few minutes before he could fight at full capacity once more. Retreat! Hawk, Lion grabbed Tiger and our men. Go now! Yelled Minato quickly, when he saw the disarrayed state of the enemy forces. Kasumi nodded as she signaled all Spartans to retreat, while picking up Nagato herself, who weakly protested while glancing at his brother, who was still laying down suppressive fire on the only route that was left for the enemy to advance upon. Go, we'll get him! Promised Hate, as 8 of his Spartans joined him. Kasumi looked at her friend worriedly for a moment, but he gave her a reassuring smile before gesturing her to follow the orders given to them. She nodded and took off with their remaining forces and Nagato in tow, ignoring the protests made by the weakened younger redhead. Minato looked up when Hate appeared beside him, even as his 8 Spartans formed a defensive line towards the only way the enemy could charge towards them from. They even formed a large barrier that blocked the entire path. Go to your brother, said Hate quietly. This is not what we planned. You know, stop fooling yourself, brother. You will have to make hard choices to see this through for all of us. It's the only way to save our nation and its future, whispered Hate sadly. Why go so far when the very nation abandoned us in our direst hour? Yelled Minato furiously, unable to control the sea of raging anger burning in his heart all this time. The village may have its drawbacks, but I am still Hate Uzumaki of Yuzushiogakure. More than the land or the leadership, we swore to protect our clansmen, our people, our families. A good soldier must be ready to sacrifice it all when the time comes, said Hate honestly, as he removed the tanto from his back and gave it to the blonde Spartan. Give it to me, my little brother. Tell him, it's his turn now. A lone tear slipped from Minato's eyes as he accepted the weapon and got up on his feet to look at his friend, who smiled without any regret on his face. It's been an honor, Captain. Hate was surprised when Minato hugged him fiercely, even as tears openly fell from his eyes as he looked at the other Spartans also maintaining their barrier, keeping the regrouping enemy forces at bay. Are you sure about this? Think of your brother, begged Minato, only to have Hate pat him gently on the back before the boy broke the hug and marched towards his troops. I'm already with my brothers. A shrill of terrifying screams tore through the burning forest as the cursed creatures emerged from the ashes and collided head-on against the barrier. Every one of them was set on fire, but more and more were already coming. The Kinkaku were making their move now that their conventional troops had suffered a heavy blow. Spartans, prepare for our final battle. Minato lowered his gaze at Hate's war cry and his resolve before giving one last salute to the entire squad that chose to make the ultimate sacrifice for their comrades, their people, and their nation. The last thing he saw before he flashed away was the sight of hundreds of Kinkaku commandos emerging from the rear lines and charging straight towards the barrier. Kasumi blinked in surprise when their captain appeared beside her in a flash, his haunted red eyes burning with sorrow and guilt. Where's Hate? She whispered in a trembling voice, her eyes already becoming moist. Nagato saw the way in which the remaining Spartans deflated on seeing their captain's crushing silence, which was followed by the sounds of explosions rocking in the devastated forest. We don't leave men behind. Fuck this, second platoon on, protested Kasumi furiously, only to be stopped by her captain's stern glare. Spartans, push forward. Honor the sacrifice of our valiant brothers by seeing this mission through, ordered Minato stoically. Kasumi glared hatefully at the blonde, and her words tore right through Minato's heart. Will the blood we shed tonight be valued at all? It was also enough to stir away the despair in the blonde's heart, and be replaced by a new sense of resolve to protect the remaining Spartans looking at him. What's the plan now, Captain? Asked Nagato sympathetically. Link up with Ghost's group and the HVT. She'll scout ahead through the skies and point the safest route we shall follow towards the land of fire. Our objective is to now charge towards friendly lines. I am asking the Mizukage to request Konoha to keep their forces ready for our rescue, their best available fighters. As many as possible, directed Minato. If they gave a damn about us, they would have sent help by now or kept it ready. The lack of a reply on that scroll tells how much our lives are worth to them, spat Kasumi bitterly. looking at the communication scroll that Minato had opened up now. Hawk, you have every right to feel betrayed, but more importantly we must focus upon our current situation and get our forces out of here. That's our duty as officers, otherwise Hate and his squad's sacrifice shall go in vain, reminded Minato patiently, breaking protocol by calling out the Spartan officer by his name. It had the desired effect as Kasumi backed down reluctantly. She had always been a cynic and a heavy critic of the leadership. It was rumored the elders had chosen her sister for the Spartan program, but Kasumi had volunteered instead to save her sibling from such a life. The pain and hardships she endured all these years, along with the near-suicidal missions their leaders sent them upon, only made her dislike for them even stronger, as she never saw her own Mizukage caring for their future. And yet she had found in her heart enough compassion for her fellow Spartans whom she was fiercely loyal to, especially her closest friend who had now stayed behind to save her life along with everybody else's. They continued their retreat for another 10 minutes, and were now nearing their rendezvous point. Captain Fox, our lines are breached. We can't hold much longer. Hayate's pained and desperate voice mixed with the sound of explosions alongside the screams of dying men reached their communication channel. My squad is finished. Last, Mag? Minato flinched as he heard an explosion go off at close range and Hayate's muffled scream before he fell. Hawk, I'm sorry for being an idiot all this time, but this is it. Forgive me? Nagato grabbed Kasumi and stopped her from responding back, which might give their position away if the enemy had captured Hayate's equipment. The girl sobbed in his arms as they heard heavy footsteps surrounding the heavily breathing Spartan officer. Ginkaku, we got a live one here. Let's take him prisoner. The footsteps were getting dangerously close even as the sound of few kunai bursts from Hayate's weapon were heard. Brother! Warned Nagato, knowing the risk of the enemy taking a fellow Spartan officer captive. To his surprise, the blonde captain looked at the sky with his fists clenched painfully. Platoon, leader Lion signing off. The Spartan stopped and turned back to see a large black sphere rising inside the ruined forest, consuming everything in its path before it shrunk back rapidly and sent a devastating shockwave in all directions. Reverse 4 symbol ceiling, whispered Nagato sadly, as he tried to console Kasumi, who fell to her knees in despair. He saw his brother's hands trembling and his red eyes desperately trying to fight back the tears that were threatening to drown him in guilt. Fighting against that pain, he took a deep breath and looked at them all. Keep moving forward. Kushina was rendered speechless as Nagato finished recalling the tale of what had happened. She saw Minato having a look at the unconscious Hashirama even as few of the other Spartans tried to comfort Kasumi, who was recovering from her shock. Fortunately for them, Kushina had already taken out the small outpost at the base of the mountain, making their retreat safe and without any further engagements with the enemy. Hawk mentioned that their Spartan wings came under a sort of aerial attack the moment they entered the diamond mine's perimeter. It was too precise and swift to be a random attack. Her assumption is that it could be a defense system controlled by the Kinkaku, a sort of barrier that detects and pinpoints any intruders, followed by them launching lightning strikes from the skies to neutralize the intruders. It fried our Spartan wings, meaning it's a technique which the enemy is able to execute as long as we are in their range, explained Nagato worriedly. Seems they have learned from our past battles and developed countermeasures, suggested Kushina. They expected such an attack and were ready for it, said Minato, as he walked towards them. Why the mines and not their base command? Why not protect both targets with such a jutsu? Asked Kushina. Perhaps this jutsu is known to only the two Kinkaku brothers. We heard the enemy calling out Ginkaku to request Hayate's capture, and since he wasn't there at the base means he was stationed with a portion of his units near the diamond mines. The Raikage must have been pretty confident in his base's defense, and more worried about saving himself from the daimyo's wrath should anything happen to the diamond mines, so he stationed them there. That's what I am able to assume, but I could be wrong, proposed Minato. Fuck. What about Kinkaku? Where is he? Asked Nagato frustratedly. Out there somewhere searching for us, same as his brother. I can order Kushina to escape with the HVT while the rest of us try and retreat to friendly lines on foot since our Spartan wings are destroyed, suggested Minato, earning a furious glare from his redhead lover. You think I'll leave you here? You're out of your mind. She cursed furiously. It's too risky, elder brother. If the enemy catches sight of our airborne forces again, they can neutralize them, and the HVT can get killed in the crossfire. Also, Hashirama does not seem strong enough for such a fight right now. Our mission fails if that happens, and Hate alongside our fallen brothers died in vain. Warned Nagato. He's right. They all looked up when Kasumi walked towards them and knelt by their side, her cold eyes glaring at the forest where her best friend had died with his squad. We need to retreat on foot. Kushina and her group can only take to skies with the HVT once we are completely safe from any enemy detection, which won't be possible in this sector. The only place where we can do this is near the Khyber Pass located here, suggested Kasumi, as she pointed at the rocky mountainous terrain on the map that had a route leading towards friendly lines. We can reach the Land of Fire's border faster if we are to take the eastern approach. We may have to be careful to avoid the swamps and hidden cave-ins, but an aerial recon could help us avoid those threats, countered Kushina with a frown. Too risky. The enemy knows the terrain better than us, and they can set up ambush points. We also don't have time to recon. Hashirama's vitals are still too weak and he needs a hospital quick. We'll do what we can to heal him. He can turn the tide in our favor quite heavily if he joins the fight, but that won't be for a while. Till then it's up to us. We should reach Khyber Pass and secure a foothold at the top of this mountain. Kushina can evacuate with the HET alongside her group from the skies there, as the enemy will have very little visibility and harder time aiming at her at such a height, while the rest of us sprint towards the nearest Land of Fire's outposts. What do you guys think? Asked Minato seriously. Nagato and Kushina nodded in consent, making the blonde captain look at his last officer. It's still nearly 500 kilometers to reach Khyber Pass. Our troops will need to rest. Some are wounded and few are low on chakra, pointed Kasumi, making the other 3 officers look at the state of their remaining force. While a large majority of their troops were still in fighting shape and alert, there were nearly a dozen that needed rest, just as Kasumi was suggesting. It was a luxury they could not afford under the current circumstances. They all got up on Minato's signal, who then went on to command their entire force down the base of the mountain with the HET. Wordlessly, he performed a familiar set of hand seals before slamming his hand down on the ground. Summoning jutsu, snow and dust flew in the area, but by the time it cleared, the Spartans were standing in front of an entire army of canine creatures the size of horses. Minato weakly grinned before falling to his knees as he coughed up blood, making Nagato lend him support as a dark black-colored wolf approached them. It's been a long time, pup, said the wolf. It has, Shara. How's the old man these days? Asked the blonde with a cheeky grin, earning a toothy smile from the alpha of the 100-strong pack of wolves. Still bitch as ever. Keeps on harping about the good old days when there used to be real battles fighting alongside your mother, commented Shara with a crude laugh. I'm afraid I need your help. The dark-skinned wolf looked around before scoffing at the boy in front of him. I bet you do. Should be pretty serious for you to summon nearly half of our entire clan. Nagato explained the situation, and the wolf was quite shocked when he saw just whom the Spartans had rescued and were now trying to evacuate to friendly lines. I've already lost 1 officer and 10 commandos. The rest of my force will need your pack's help to reach friendly territory in time while fending off the Kinkaku and their allies who are on our tail. Our first objective is to reach the Khyber Pass so Ghost can take to the skies with Hashirama. The rest of us can then continue on ground since our Spartan wings are destroyed, explained Minato honestly. You're asking me to take quite the risk, kid, said Shara seriously, looking the boy straight in the eye. I am. Our clan has been allied with the Namikaze family for centuries. But when they fell, most of my clan was wiped out in the genocide as well, defending their summoners. My old man nearly died during your mother's final battle, and now you're asking me to risk the lives of half of my remaining family, pointed Shara without hesitation. Minato lowered his gaze on being reminded of the sacrifice made by these creatures for his family. By all rights, they could have severed ties when the Namikaze clan was nearly wiped out save for his mother. Yet they stayed loyal to her and then to her elder son. But this mission could further endanger their own survival. He could not fault the wolf for raising these concerns. Minato would have done the same in his stead had he been placed in a situation like this. Looking into the beast's eyes, he realized words would not be enough this time, like the past summoners. Without your help, we probably won't make it. I promise to fulfill any request you may have in return for this aid, promised Minato sincerely. If we help you today, then you will refrain yourself from calling for our aid in the future until we say so, proposed Shara frankly. That's bullshit, protested Nagato, as he realized the beast was nearly severing the contract without actually doing it. Tough luck, pup. We thought a better world would follow since the clan wars ended, but conflict has only become worse and more deadlier. My old man is quite emotional and still believes in honor, but I need to look after my family. I need to keep them safe and prevent the few that remain from dying in this unending war, at least until we rebuild our clan. After that, they are free to fight and die alongside their human summoners, explained Shara calmly. Before anyone else could speak or protest, Minato got back on his feet and swallowed a soldier pill which restored a portion of the chakra he had just spent. Taking a deep breath, he looked the beast right in the eye. You have my word, vowed Minato with a short bow. The wolf gave a subtle bow in return as his entire pack approached the haggard Spartan task force. Within a few moments, most of the Spartans were seated atop the beasts, with Shara taking on Kushina and Hashirama. Tiger and I alongside Guttock Squad shall defend your rear. We'll make a tactical withdrawal and prevent the Kinkaku from assaulting our main group led by Hawk and Ghost. Your objective is to reach the Khyber Pass and secure the mountain first for HET's extraction, ordered Minato, as 12 Spartans alongside Nagato joined him. The rest of their 100-strong force were mounted atop the wolf pack led by Kushina and Kasumi under Shera's lead. Hawk, you're in command. Make sure our force secures that mountain at all costs, and we will ensure nobody reaches you before that happens, ordered Minato. Understood, Captain? Try not to get killed, said Kasumi hesitantly, and blinked when the blonde came forward and hugged her while also passing the communications scroll in one of her pockets. I'm sorry about Hate. I know how precious he was to you, he whispered, as she tried to fight back the tears arriving in her eyes. Fallen. For Mizukage, clan and country, she miserably whispered, unable to conceal the bitterness she now felt deep in her heart. Their friend's final moments still echoed in his ears and would haunt him for the rest of his life. As Kasumi went away, she didn't see the crestfallen look on the blonde's face before he steeled himself once more and went on to do his duty when everything and everyone else was fleeting away. Ginkaku glanced at his surroundings while moving forward across the forest alongside his entire force. Their front line was now composed of his battle-hardened warriors followed by their slave creatures, and in the rear were the remaining regular shinobi and civilian forces trying to keep up with the elites. Many were already left behind, but he didn't care as time was of crucial essence. He regretted underestimating the lion-masked Spartan officer. He wouldn't have lost close to 50 of his special forces troops had he not ordered the capture of that Yuza soldier. It was a testament to the fallen boy's resolve and warrior spirit that he fought so valiantly in a battle that he was never going to win. They had caused Spartans casualties, but the enemy was still a step ahead. They had been able to rescue Hashirama, making a mockery of all the defenses Ginkaku and his brother had set up. If they managed to escape, the wreckage would have everyone's heads. Sir, we should be able to catch up with them in another 20 minutes, reported one of his commando, his eagerness for a fight not going unnoticed by the said leader. Don't be hasty, or have you forgotten whom we are facing? Warned Ginkaku. I know who they are, Commander, answered the commando without hesitation, earning just a cryptic nod from the older man. They continued their chase for a few more minutes until suddenly explosions went off in the front line, reducing 24 of his men to dust. He ordered an immediate halt, and as the smoke and dust cleared, he saw 2 enemy commandos standing right in front of them across treetops. One of them had dark wings of chakra across his back and the very same energy swirling all around him. The other's chakra was quite familiar from their past battles. From the way he held a blade in one hand and a kunai in the other made his identity even more easy to recognize. The Namikaze brothers. More and more shadows joined the duo until Ginkaku and his men found themselves facing an entire squad. He grimaced when he saw a small but familiar arm patch worn by the Spartan squad. They had fought once before, and the painful scar on Ginkaku's back was a living proof of his battle with these warriors. Not another step. You are done here, warned Nagato. Ginkaku cursed when he felt their target getting further and further away, with these warriors buying them precious time. He recomposed himself when his own warriors joined him, and their fierce gazes yearned for blood. He looked at the Spartan captain, who stared back at him, both knowing the consequences of the inevitable battle. Charge. Chapter 29. My honor was loyalty, elder brother. A decade. He had longed for that voice for that many years and was surprised to experience the surreal moment before him as he watched his half-sibling stand before him. Tall and strong, just as he remembered. It made him remember all the years he spent in loneliness when he lost the boy in front of him alongside his former comrades and friends. The war was over by the time he had recovered from his injuries. There was no place left for a super soldier like him in the society anymore. Their own people shunned him when he falsely accepted leading the Spartans to their deaths in a covert operation, never revealing the details of what went down in reality in order to protect the future of their nation by protecting their leadership, who honored that sacrifice by looking after the loved ones of the fallen Spartans, albeit at the cost of ostracizing the last Spartan believed to be left alive. He lost his purpose, just a broken tool of no use to anyone, until the Mizukage gave him one final and suicidal mission, one which he accepted as he wanted to die, as there was no one left who cared about him, no one who loved him. He was unnecessary, and felt that way until he found Ino, who filled that void in his broken heart. And now he had to again face the ones he had lost. But it also gave him a chance he never thought he would ever get. I am truly sorry, brother, for everything, he said sincerely, and meant it with all his heart, as the dreams they once shared all those years ago flashed through his heart once more. Did the village truly do that to you, elder brother? Asked Nagato sadly, and clenched his fist when he saw the shocked expression in his sibling's eyes. How do you know? Asked Naruto in shock, Only the elders and the Yuzukage apart from the leaders of Konoha and Kumogakure knew the truth, and none of them had ever said anything to protect their own interests. The ones who resurrected me told me. I know everything that has happened, admitted Nagato. Nagato, I wanted them to treat you for the hero you were, for our comrades to be recognized for their sacrifice, and they betrayed us all. Betrayed our memories. Tobirama took a step back when the redhead unleashed a monstrous killing intent, and the glare he gave to the Hokage could have melted lesser shinobi. Madara was right, this shinobi system is broken. Nothing has changed, even now young children are dying in a new war just like we did. Even now nations dishonor their fallen soldiers, even now mankind is embroiled in conflicts that continue to extend this endless cycle of pain and violence. We gave our lives to stop that cycle, said Nagato furiously. If you know it all, then you also understand that Madara was the one who started the great ninja wars, pointed Tobirama, earning a fierce glare and a nod from the redhead Uzumaki in front of him. He was a catalyst, yes. But you cannot deny sooner or later someone else would have started those conflicts for their own interests. Your brother Hashirama sowed those seeds by distributing the biju among nations, essentially giving power-hungry rulers the means to further pursue their agendas and overestimate their own strength, countered Nagato bitterly. If it's any consolation, I warned him not to do it, said Tobirama sincerely, earning a scoff from the redhead. Tell that to the dead. The Hokage lowered his gaze, unable to match the righteous eyes of a person who lost everything including his own life because of that mistake. What are you saying, brother? Asked Naruto hesitantly, a pit forming in his stomach which was further deepened when the redhead looked at him coldly. Hand over the Hokage, elder brother. We'll avoid further bloodshed, stated Nagato seriously. You joined Madara? Asked Naruto in shock. He offered to bring us back to life. All of us, said Nagato honestly, as he pointed at the Spartans all around them. Tobirama sharply looked at his son and watched the color drain from his face. You're lying. What reason do I have to lie, Hokage? I'm already dead. Gave my life for a nation that destroyed my dear brother and disrespected the legacy of my men in order to cover their own cowardice. Broke my last family to such an extent that he nearly took his own life, and when he was completely broken, they used him again for another suicidal mission and sent him to Kirigakure, effectively concealing their crimes forever. Maybe you're right and there is no way to bring us back to life. But, if there is and Madara can do it, then I will follow him so that I can bring my men back to life, argued Nagato fiercely. He intends to destroy Yuzu, Nagato whispered Naruto sadly. The nation we loved and died for never cared about us, elder brother. I can't forgive them for what they did to you and our men. Such a corrupt system needs to be destroyed so that future children do not experience what we did. If you still believe that our nation actually cared about us, then tell me honestly, why did they send Kushina to Kirigakure when she returned to Yuzu after you killed the lightning daimyo? Madara told me about that. Naruto flinched as he remembered explicitly requesting his former lover to live a peaceful life in their village after the years of hardship she had endured in a hostile nation as a spy. Kushina had agreed reluctantly, only to later show up in Kirigakure on the orders of their leadership to keep an eye on him. Even her chakra had felt different. His eyes widened in horror as a disturbing possibility came to light. She tried to clear your name, brother. Tried to tell our people of the real truth about us Spartans, and the Yuzukage punished her for it. In order to conceal his crimes, he messed with her free will and sent her on the same suicide mission as he sent you. Made her and you believe that she came by her own choice, when in truth it wasn't. My best friend, my brother, my men, destroyed forever for the sake of that man's desire to cling to power. I tried to accept this, but I can't, explain Nagato sadly. The sins of one man cannot be the reason for you to turn your back on your village. You swore on an oath, reminded Tobirama without mercy, unable to hide his disappointment. No nation was perfect, but treason could not be accepted under any circumstances, and we died fulfilling that oath. The former Hokage had no answer to that when he looked at the young Spartans in front of him. The shinobi in him felt their pain, but the leader inside of him could understand why the Yuzukage did what he did. It wasn't right, but was the way of the world. It's not a surprise for you to defend that man, Tobirama. After all, you were the one who recommended the truth to be buried, said Nagato bitterly. Naruto looked at the Senju and was shocked when the man didn't meet his gaze. That's right. It was you, Tobirama, who encouraged the Yuzukage to hide the truth completely in order to save the honor of your dear brother. Yuzu was given steep reparations for that silence, and the Yuzukage's decision to sacrifice his finest troops as sacrificial pawns never came to light as well, which saved his reign. Konoha successfully negotiated a peace treaty in their favor alongside saving the reputation of their foolish leader Hashirama by never revealing the truth of how he was captured by the enemy, and how many allied shinobi died to save him. while Kumogakure got a saving grace with majority of their people never knowing of how brutally their armed forces and one Biju were crushed by us Spartans. My men died for our nation and its allies, and their bodies were left to rot on that battlefield. Their families told blatant lies. My brother made a convenient scapegoat for the crimes of allied leaders," pointed Nagato mercilessly, unable to hide the anger he felt deep inside himself. The Hokage had the grace to remain silent, which made his own son take a step back. Nagato used that momentary slip to rush towards the Senju, and was quite surprised when he had to cross swords with his own brother, who stopped his charge. "Why?" asked the bewildered redhead, unable to understand as to why his brother would still defend such a man after he just told him of what the same man had done to the blonde through his actions. "I can't let you kill or capture him," brother answered the blonde sadly. "I don't understand," whispered Nagato, earning a sad smile from his older sibling. "He's my father." "But Madara didn't tell you that, did he, brother?" Nagato froze. He had always known that the two of them had a common mother but different fathers. That hadn't stopped either of them to consider themselves as true brothers. Their parents had never revealed who Naruto's real father was. "Mother told you before she died?" asked Nagato hesitantly, putting the clues together. Yes. It all made sense now, and if he looked closely, he could now see the similarities between the Senju and the blonde warrior. "Then why did you not search for him?" asked Nagato curiously. "I made a promise to her that I'd look after you. I made a promise to you that we'd fight alongside each other to defend the nation for which our parents died. I swore an oath as a shinobi to defend our motherland, no matter the cost. My honor was loyalty, Nagato." The redhead lowered his weapon as he watched his sibling look into his eyes with a smile on his face. "Our nation doesn't deserve a hero like you," whispered the redhead sadly. "No, it doesn't. It deserves more." Tobarama's eyes widened on hearing those words said with so much conviction by his own son, a resolve that also touched the boy's departed sibling who just stared at the blonde. "The village may not be perfect and have its flaws, but it is the dream for which our parents gave their lives. It is the legacy for which my beloved brother and my men sacrificed themselves, a legacy that I shall protect until my last breath no matter the cost," promised Naruto fiercely. "I can't forgive them for what they did to you, brother. Or our men. It's not right," whispered Nagato. "Then I'll correct that mistake since I played a part in letting it happen." The brothers looked at the Hokage, who stepped forward and couldn't help but look at his son proudly. "You're right, Spartan. It was my brother's mistakes that led to such tragedy, and good shinobi died correcting it. Loyalty towards nation is necessary, but the same nation should also honor its heroes alive and fallen, for it is their sacrifice that keeps that dream going. I'll ensure the world knows the story of the sacrifice made by your brother, yourself, your men, to defend Yizu and its allies," promised Tobarama sincerely. "The Mizukage would never reveal the truth," denied Nagato. "You leave him to me." The redhead was quite surprised on seeing the absolute determination in the Hokage's eyes. "Why?" he asked seriously. "Because I would like my grandson to know about his valiant father and uncle who were true heroes that sacrificed everything for their village and its allies," answered Tobarama with a smile. Nagato looked at his brother, and his eyes widened in shock when he saw the blonde blush and look away. "It's true," admitted Naruto shyly. The shackles of grief constricting the redhead's heart were loosened when he saw the happiness in his brother's eyes. "You're truly happy, elder brother?" asked the redhead earnestly. "I was in a dark place when I lost all of you, but with time I found a person who loved someone like me. I found comrades who believed in me. I got the opportunity to protect our dream, the village, and have a family of my own. And it's all thanks to you. You saved me, brother," confessed Naruto with a grateful smile. Tobarama watched a crack appear on the redhead's face, which soon started to spread, much to the blonde's surprise. "What's happening?" asked the blonde worriedly. "Edo Tensei is a jutsu that has a few weaknesses. One of them is." Tobarama's eyes widened when Naruto grabbed him quickly, and he felt the familiar sensation of a teleportation taking place as Nagato exploded into a brilliant flash of light. When they landed, the Hokage grunted and saw his son was furiously looking in the direction where his brother had exploded to ashes. From the smoke, a man with familiar red eyes walked through that made Naruto take a step back and Tobarama to miss a heartbeat. For Madara Uchiha was a warrior capable enough of instilling fear even in the most brave warriors of the shinobi world. "You," spat Tobarama bitterly, earning a raised eyebrow from Madara. "It's been a while," replied Madara with absolute vengeance burning in his eyes. The Uchiha was surprised when Naruto stepped in the path leading towards the Hokage and glared with absolute hatred burning in his eyes. "You'll pay for what you did to my brother," promised Naruto murderously. "Madara Taijima Uchiha does not need any help to take down the likes of you and that wretched man cowering behind you." "Setsu, you tried your tricks, now let me do what we came to do," scoffed Madara. A strange plant-like creature emerged from the ground beside Uchiha and grinned before making a hand sign summoning more than 100 coffins as the Spartans were dragged inside before it disappeared completely. Naruto was pained when he saw his brother's corpse that was reforming also met the same fate. Boy, I don't know whether to admire your loyalty or curse your misfortune. You still believe that some good can come from this broken shinobi system despite being used by it again and again. You still choose to stand by your village even after your brother told you as to what they did to your fellow Spartan. It's a true shame that good men like you die young for the cowards like Tobirama standing behind you, said Madara disappointedly. He smiled when Tobirama instantly got back on his feet and grabbed a kunai in each of his hands. The Hokage was unnerved when Madara gave a cold smile to the blonde in front of him. This broken system used you, your brother, your parents, your friends and comrades. Even your own wife and child, said Madara with a satisfied smile. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Naruto bitterly. My words will mean nothing to you yet, boy. Go and see for yourself the real truth of this world, said Madara cryptically. Zetsu chuckled as he disappeared back into the ground and Madara saw the first silhouettes of Kirigakure shinobi approaching towards them. You will see the truth with your own eyes. Then either you'll die as a hero or bring a revolution the likes of which the world will never see again. I look forward to the choice you make. Black Flash, whispered Madara with a smile. The Uchiha directly looked into the eyes of Senju Tobirama and was satisfied when he saw real fear in those eyes. No matter how much you run, the claws of truth shall always find you, Tobirama. A day of reckoning is coming. Soon this world of lies and deceit shall fall. Madara vanished with a puff of smoke as the conflict happening all across the island ceased with the complete disappearance of the enemy. Naruto clenched his fist furiously and turned around to saw Haku and a group of Kiri forces charging towards him. His gaze connected with his own father, and he felt something rankle deep in his heart when Tobirama looked away. Are you alright? Asked Haku as soon as she arrived. Yes, neutralize any remaining pirates on the island and dispose their bodies. Leave no evidence of our presence here. We need to get the hell out of here quickly, ordered Naruto. The enemy? She asked. They are gone. Haku quickly checked with the rest of their forces under the command of the other 7 ninja swordsmen, and was surprised to find that was actually the truth. But why? She asked curiously, and flinched when Naruto glared at her furiously. Just carry out your orders. The blonde walked past the stunned Haku, who quickly got out of the way as she felt the raw anger burning inside the man as he zeroed in on Tobirama. He stepped in front of the Senju, and didn't relent until the man looked into his eyes. I want to see my wife and child as soon as we reach Konoha, he whispered furiously with murder evident in his eyes. Of course, answered Tobirama sincerely. Was that true? What Nagato said? About you being the one to bury the truth about us Spartans to save your brother's reputation? About what Yuzu did to Kushina despite my wishes? Asked Naruto seriously. The Mizukage couldn't let the truth become known so easily. It would destroy his reign. It would also cause severe damage to Konoha and my deceased brother's reputation, but I have every intention of making this right. You have my word, promised Tobirama earnestly. Naruto shoved past him and his words sent a chill down Tobirama's heart. I shall see the truth soon enough with my own eyes. Chapter 30. World of Lies. Land of Fire. Mangetsu carefully walked through the dense forests of the Land of Fire. Even if he was surrounded by his fellow swordsmen and the rest of the 501 SD, he still didn't want to let his guard down for a second. Certainly not after they had lost 30 of their men in that ambush at Nagi Island 2 days ago. They had survived the conflict when the enemy had mysteriously vanished, making Mangetsu and his comrades believe that there was an ulterior motive behind the attack, one that wasn't known to them. That incident had also led to another disturbing outcome. Their once calm and reliable general had barely spoken more than a few necessary orders ever since they left Nagi Island. Even when they linked up with their escort group from Konoha led by Hiro Hyuga, the head of the prestigious clan, the blonde had merely exchanged a simple nod and a brief greeting before asking the man to hurry up and escorting them to the Leaf. All the while he had never once spoken to Tobirama and had actually gone to great lengths to maintain a distance from the Senju, whereas previously they both were on friendly terms. Something's not right, he whispered. Keep quiet. Whatever it is, the general doesn't want us to know, warned Haku, having personally witnessed some of that wrath not very long ago. We could be walking into a trap, he suggested, earning a glare from his childhood friend. Shut your conspiracy theories. Konoha needs allies just like we do, denied Haku. Treachery is a shinobi's main weapon, Haku. We are not the samurai, warned Kisame with a crooked smile. He's right. All bets are off if the tree huggers try something funny, promised Amuri with a grin. That's more like it. My blade's been itching for some fun, said Zabuza with an evil smile, making one of the Konoha jounin to back away from the infamous swordsman. You do remember we are here to sign a peace treaty? Not start another war. Deadpan Jinpachi, making Zabuza's eyebrows twitch in annoyance and the others to chuckle. They stopped their conversation when Naruto glanced back at them, and while he didn't say anything, the look in his eye made it perfectly clear that he didn't appreciate such statements being made publicly, especially when the Konoha ninjas were nearby. The 501st was strong, but they were entering the lion's den, and it was better not to poke the beast. Tobirama hesitantly glanced at his son, who solemnly walked in the front, away from everyone else in their large group. He could feel the turmoil raging deep within the boy's heart ever since the events of Nagi Island. Seeing his brother like that and learning the dark truth of the past had shaken him. The fact that Yuzu continued using the ones closest to him like Kushina despite his wishes in order to protect its self-interest, or that of its Kage, had rattled his trust. He may have told Nagato that the village still mattered over anything else, but Tobirama had seen the heartbreak in those eyes. This was a man who lost his family, friends, his future, and sacrificed even his memory for the sake of his village's future, only to be betrayed again and again. His son was strong and a true ninja, but there were limits to what a man could endure. It was what made the Hokage nervous. The way in which Madara seemed so interested in the boy and was so sure of the future. It was the second instance when the traitorous Uchiha leader had met Naruto in battle and hand-killed the boy despite him choosing to oppose his plans. I'll have to ask Sara to arrange a meeting between him and Ino, quickly thought Tobirama seriously. His prized student currently serving as the third Hokage would have taken care of Tobirama's daughter-in-law and unborn grandchild without fail once Tsukumo brought her home. He remembered the night when Tsukumo Hatake, the leader of Konoha spies, and Kiri had brought in a badly wounded Ino to him. There was another spy named Mikoto Uchiha who was also there with minor injuries. Her cover had been blown and a Kiri hunter unit had went to capture her, where Ino had intervened to save her life. A conflict had ensued in which Ino had sustained grievous injuries while trying to protect the younger girl. Tsukumo had ordered all spies from Konoha to abandon their posts and return to their homeland immediately for fear of Kiri discovering even one of them afterwards, and what it could mean for the captive Tobirama held in the mist. Tobirama had seen how badly charred one of Ino's arms had been from the battle. They had decided to discard it and use it as evidence of her passing, so that Kiri forces considered her as a martyr alongside her entire unit, who perished while trying to capture an enemy spy. In that way, Naruto's cover could also be protected in the mist. She had been slipping in and out of consciousness repeatedly that night, and had lost a lot of blood, sometimes whispering out for Naruto in her hallucinated state. There had been traces of poison in her system courtesy of being hit by two Saban laced with poison from her unit when they discovered she had also been a Konoha spy when she tried to save Mikoto. Tsukumo and Tobirama had done their best to heal her injuries while treating the poison, and Mikoto had readily given her own blood, which had been a match with the blonde Yamanaka's, to replenish all that she had lost. Tsukumo had then taken both the kunoichis back to Konoha by himself, all the while requesting Tobirama to assure Naruto that they would do everything in their power to protect his wife and child. That was the last time he had seen that man, and had only received a cryptic message during the subsequent weeks that Ino had been safely brought back to Konoha by Tsukumo, and was gradually recovering. He had dutifully passed on this information to his son, who was relieved immensely to learn of her safety. It had not only increased his faith in Tobirama and Konoha, but also made him push the Mizukage for an alliance with the Leaf, making the Hozuki clan head relent in the end. As the silhouette of the Leaf village's main entrance drew near, the Hokage dearly hoped to forge this alliance in order to bring peace to this war-torn world. He watched Hiro Hyuga march forward and greet Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, who was standing at the main gate alongside all of Tobirama's other students such as Danzo Shimura, Koharu, Hamura, and Torifu Akimichi. The absence of Kagami Uchiha among the group hit Tobirama hard, as he was reminded of his students' martyrdom in this war, leaving the leadership of the Uchiha clan to his young son, Shursui, who was currently fighting on the front lines. Even so, he maintained his composure and watched Naruto look at his men. In an instant, the remaining 501st formed a guard of honor as the blonde gestured for the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen to carry out their task. They nodded dutifully at their general's command and formally gathered around Tobirama and escorted him towards his village and its new Hokage. The Namikaze warrior appeared in front of Hiruzen as well, earning a respectful nod from the young Hokage. "It's a great honor to finally meet you in person, General Namikaze. We have heard quite a lot of your exploits," said Hiruzen respectfully with a friendly smile. "The honor is mine, Lord Hokage. On behalf of the Second Mizukage Genjutsu Hozuki, I return your former Hokage honorably to its nation as a sign of friendship between our two great nations," replied Naruto calmly with a respectful nod. He narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw a dark-haired shinobi looking at him suspiciously. "Danzo!" chided Koharu with a hiss, finally making the Shimura heir stop his staring. "Forgive our manners, you must have been quite tired from your journey. Please allow us to extend you our hospitality, proposed Hiruzen with a friendly smile. Naruto wanted to get straight to the negotiations and more importantly wanted to meet his beloved wife. But when he looked back he only saw for the first time how tired his men were. To their credit, not a single one of them had complained when he had made them march towards the land of fire without stopping for a second. It was time he acknowledged that loyalty, by doing what was right for everyone instead of his personal desires. We are in your debt, he relented with a grateful short bow. Before Hiruzen could say anything, they heard shocked gasps from the back of the Konoha group as a red-headed woman burst forward and embraced Tobirama in a fierce hug. Mito! Exclaimed Tobirama with a happy smile, as he returned the hug. Soon enough almost the entire Senju clan arrived at the main entrance of the village to greet their patriarch. In them was a beautiful teenage blonde girl and a young boy that rushed forward and joined Mito in embracing the Senju leader who had returned to them after months of captivity. Tsunade! Nawaki! A part of Naruto's heart was saddened on seeing Tobirama bend down and lift his overjoyed grandnephew in one arm as he embraced Tsunade and Mito with the other. The sight reminding the Namikes of the family he had lost. Deciding to give the family some privacy, he was about to step to the side when Tobirama broke the embrace and looked at him. It made his family look at him for the first time. I wouldn't be here if not for him. He saved me. Naruto, I want you to meet my family, said Tobirama with an honest smile. Naruto saw Mito smile at him as she walked towards him with Tsunade and Nawaki in tow. We are in your debt, General Namikaze, she thanked him sincerely. It was my duty, Lady Mito. It was also a way of expressing my gratitude for you and your people saving my life 10 years ago, said Naruto respectfully, whispering the last part loud enough only for the Senju matriarch to hear. Family. Duty. Honor. The Uzumaki's clan words recited by the blonde made her take a step back as she remembered the Spartan captain who had saved her deceased husband's life all those years ago. A boy they had then saved from death's doorstep. You, she whispered in shock. Mito watched in stunned silence as Naruto knelt and extended a hand towards both Tsunade and Nawaki respectively. Tobirama had told him about these two who were his niece and nephew by blood, their parents who would have been Naruto's cousins having long since perished in the initial days of the Second Great Ninja War, much to Mito's grief. Tsunade shook his hand confidently with a curious look in her eyes while Nawaki smiled shyly but did reciprocate the gesture. Let's take our meeting to a more comfortable place, suggested Hiruzen gently. Naruto nodded as he got back on his feet and saw Mito was yet to get over her shock after realizing his true identity. He idly wondered what she would think on learning the whole truth. Of all the things he had expected, a bone-crushing hug was not something Naruto had expected from Mito Uzumaki, as a pleased Tobirama looked at the exchange with an embarrassed look on his usually stoic face. Your son? The gods have truly blessed us, blessed our clan, said Mito happily, as she looked at her brother-in-law. Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was also present at this private meeting in the Senju manor, was also left speechless by the revelation. Tsukumo had told him that Naruto was an Yuza's spy, but not the fact that he was a lost son of Tobirama Senju. It was not something he could have predicted even in his wildest dreams. Looking at his teacher made Hiruzen guess it was perhaps done on Tobirama's instructions to protect the blonde. You have more family, Lady Mito. I have a wife from this village who worked as a fellow spy with me and Kiri. We are going to have a child together, said Naruto with a gentle smile. Mito smiled happily at that before hugging him again, but his heart sank a little when he saw Hiruzen develop an uncertain look in his eyes on that revelation. He gently broke the hug and walked towards the young man and looked directly into his eyes. Where is my wife? Where is Ino? I would like to meet her, demanded Naruto. Yes, Saru. The negotiations won't start till tomorrow. We would like to meet our daughter-in-law privately at this residence tonight. Can you arrange for that? Asked Tobirama, earning an encouraging nod from Mito as well. Hiruzen looked at the three members of the Senju family, and the nervous look in his eyes made Naruto take a step back. I'm truly sorry, but that won't be possible, apologized Hiruzen profusely. What did you say? Asked Naruto, with barely restrained anger visible in his eyes. Hiruzen truly didn't want to be in this room when both Tobirama and Mito flanked him, their serious eyes boring into his very soul itself. Saru, this is my family we are talking about, warned Tobirama tersely. Hiruzen, we can trust Naruto. He's the Spartan captain that sacrificed everything to save Hashirama's life 10 years ago. I'll vouch for him personally, guaranteed Mito without hesitation. The third Hokage really didn't want to be in the room, but he steeled himself and looked directly at all three members of the Senju family. Ino Yamanaka never reached a leaf. She succumbed to her poisonous wounds while being evacuated from Kirigakure by Tsukumo Hatake. I'm truly sorry, She was killed in the line of duty. Tobarama's eyes widened in horror and Mito gasped in shock as the two of them just stared at the young Hokage in front of them, who lowered his gaze after revealing that dark truth. Not a moment later they were both pushed aside violently as a blonde blur charged forward and grabbed Hiruzen by the throat and lifted him high in the air. The young Hokage found himself facing a pair of murderous red eyes and a killing intent that wanted to destroy his very existence itself. "You're lying! Tsukumo sent us a message stating she was alive!" yelled Naruto murderously, his hand squeezing the young Hokage's neck even more painfully. Naruto! He couldn't hear either of Tobarama or Mito's pleas for him to stop. His very fabric of existence lying upon the man currently in his grasp. His heart was hammering painfully in his chest, his blood was boiling, and he felt tears prickle at the corner of his eyes. The despair that he had fought his entire life, the despair Ino had helped eradicate by becoming his light, was arriving back into his soul with every passing moment. One day, the darkness inside the hidden villages will consume that lone light of yours. Just as it did mine. Madara's fateful words on that battlefield crushed his heart mercilessly. Even so, he still didn't want to believe them. He squeezed Hiruzen's neck harder to make him tell that this was all a cruel joke, that he was mistaken. Tsukumo lied, she's truly dead. We had to keep this a secret in order to get Tobarama-sensei back to the leaf, safely wheezed Hiruzen in agony. He wanted to fight back, but the grip was too strong and he didn't know how his mentor and Lady Mito, who had paled horribly now, would react. Thankfully, the gods finally had mercy upon him as he was released and collapsed to the floor as Naruto sank to his knees. Ninjas are nothing but disposable tools in the eyes of their nations. There is no honor, no light, and no hope in this dark world. Tears were freely falling from his eyes as those dreaded words became reality once more. He never wanted to believe them, no matter how true they were. He had been willing to sacrifice his own life and future to not let them become real. He barely registered Mito arriving beside him and embracing him in a fierce hug from behind, or Tobarama yanking his student back on his feet and shouting at him. All he felt was nothing but despair and unbearable pain that threatened to consume his empty heart as all the dreams he had hoped of living turned to ashes. He barely heard Hiruzen whispering of someone named Danzo recommending the leaf keep this secret until Tobarama was returned back safely. His wife was dead, had been dead for months, and his unborn child would never see this world. Tobarama cursed when Naruto teleported away in the blink of an eye, making him punch his student. It was fitting. Heavy clouds had shrouded the Leaf Village in a cover of darkness, and soon enough a fierce torrent fell from the skies as a lone blonde was standing alone in the village's cemetery, his eyes fixated upon the grave in front of him, Ino Yamanaka. It was just her name engraved beneath the leaf symbol that served as a tombstone. There was no citation, no description of who she truly was or what she had done for the sake of her village and comrades. Just another forgotten shinobi in a cemetery full of thousands. Nobody would remember of how she risked her life for years in a hostile nation for the future of her village, of how she gave hope to a lost warrior, of how she was a true ninja who risked everything for the sake of her nation and laid down her life while trying to save a comrade. His parents, his brother, his Spartan comrades, and now his wife and child. The last truth made him tear up again, for that innocent life was lost before it even entered this world. Sacrificed in the endless conflict between the shinobi nations in their thirst for ever more power and influence. Not even a grave for you, my child, he whispered miserably. He sank to his knees and gingerly touched the tombstone, hoping to hear their voice, if only for a second. Silence was his answer. He had hoped so desperately for them to be safe. He would happily trade places with them if he was allowed that chance, but it would never be so. He had wanted to believe in the current shinobi system, no matter how broken or twisted it was. Anger surged inside of him like never before. A rage that consumed each and every fiber of his being. No, it wasn't anger, hatred. His eyes turned red as he felt that hatred explode inside his heart. His eyes developed a slit pattern in the middle as he felt a new power arise inside of him. He grasped the soil in front of his wife's grave and gingerly twisted it in his fingers. I will destroy this world of lies. He swore with heavy tears falling from his eyes. He got up on his feet and gave one last glance at the grave of his wife and child. Now, he had nothing left to lose, nothing left to hope for. No matter how honest he was or sacrificed, this world was too far gone. Madara had been right. It was impossible to trust one another if you couldn't see the other's person heart. He had given everything to Yuzu, to Konoha, only to be betrayed by them time and again. He can bring us back to life. His eyes widened in shock as he remembered his brother's words and wondered if there was any truth behind it. He didn't want to hope anymore after everything that had happened, but if there was a chance, He would take it for the sake of the ones he loved. He turned around and walked away from his wife's grave as he made a promise deep within his heart. A world of peace, a world of truth. I will create such a world where we can be together again. Kirigakure, Genjutsu Hozuki had been calmly sipping his coffee while sitting at the dining table of his own home deep inside the Hozuki clan's district. He looked outside and saw it was quite a gloomy weather with dark clouds hovering over the entire village, making it appear as if it was night. He looked at the picture of himself and his wife holding their only son in their arms. I hope you have reached Konoha safely, Mangetsu prayed the proud father. He knew it was unnecessary considering his son was under the capable command of Naruto Namikaze. That boy had great potential and Genjutsu knew he would one day become a shinobi that the world would remember. That belief was the reason why he had chosen the boy as his successor over his own son. It was not to say that Mangetsu was not talented, but being a Kage required a different kind of inner strength, one which he had seen inside Naruto. Since he hadn't received any requests for help from the blonde, he was assuming their mission at Nagi Island had gone well and they had successfully eliminated the pirates that had terrorized these lands, all the while enjoying the protection of their feudal lord. The sodden old man would not like it, and Genjutsu knew there could be some repercussions for the mist from such an action, but it had to be done for the sake of their nation. His eyes narrowed when a small crack developed in his family photo. He flared his sensory powers by needing chakra and was alarmed as he couldn't detect the chakra signatures of the Umbu squads guarding his residence at all times. His fears became reality when one of the Umbu stationed inside his residence tumbled down the stairs lifelessly with bone-shaped spears sticking out of his back. The front door was blasted open and he came face to face with the ones who had the audacity to launch such an attack. You!